waiting is finally over. The anticipation and excitement looming from the mountainsides. The crystal clear water of Lake Garda has drawn an entry list that reads like a who's who of racing, with a few sailing legends thrown into the mix. The eyes of the sailing world are firmly set on this iconic venue. 96 teams from 23 countries, 20 star world champions, 5 Olympic medalists, and another 10 Olympians are among the sailors ready to duke it out. For the first time, professionals as well as amateurs will join in fierce competition alongside star-class stalwarts to try to win the star-class European title, 2,500 SSL ranking points, and the lion's share of the $100,000 US prize pot. Conditions are set to test the best of the best. 5 full-on days of sailing. Welcome to Riva del Garda and the first ever Star Sailors League Breeze Grand Slam. And where better to come than the majestic Lake Garda in northern Italy. Fraglia della Riva is our host, a humble, friendly sailing club. Any sailor from around the world would feel at home here. It's a special place for sailors, not just because of this lovely setting, but crucially for that powerful thermal wind generator made by the mountains, cool air wrestling with the warmth from the valleys. Shirley Robertson, 2 times gold medalist, calls this a very special place, and we'll be hearing from Shirley as our on-water commentator during racing today. We've got some big names like Lars Grail, Xavier Rohart in that press conference, along with Freddie Loof, Robert Scheid, Paul Kayard, match racer Torvar Mirsky, even Juan Kay, the Volvo Ocean race designer. He's here battling away with the weekend heroes, the club racers. In a sporting nutshell, there's a lot to play for. The first combined SSL Grand Slam and Star European Championship. Here in the studio at the club, I'm joined by Maurice O'Connell, Prof, as we will be calling you, and everybody calls you, Melges 24 world champ and star class aficionado. You've campaigned these boats for the Olympics.
Yes, Digby, thanks. Delighted to be here. I sailed the Star from 2004 to 2008 and coached the Star in the Athens Olympics. But since I stopped sailing in 2008, I've followed the class very, very closely and really excited to be here.
And we've been here a couple of days and you've gone round and caught up with some old friends and you've got a little vibe from the scene.
Yeah, it was great actually when I arrived on Monday and just walking through the boat park. It was fantastic seeing some friendly faces and people that I competed with and sailed with over the years. And there's plenty of new faces in the class, but plenty of more experienced sailors there as well. So it was great to catch up with some of those guys and swap some war stories.
Well, we're saying that this is the first combined European Championship with a Breeze Grand Slam, which is the Star Sailors League ATP tennis style tournament. We've 5 days of racing. Let's look at the schedule. We're on Wednesday, about to get set for race number 1. The boats and the committee boats are out there, looking at 2 races today and probably through the next 4 days. Potentially on Sunday, they'll have their final qualifying race, and then they go into the quarterfinals, semis, and final. Now, really, there are 10 qualifiers, you know, so to survive in the competition, the top 10 go through. Whoever wins the qualifier gets a bye to the final, whoever's second to the semi-final. But chat to most of the sailors here, their goal over the next 4 days is to make that cut. The points don't carry, so it is a knockout competition from there on in. And very, very cool to have that as the format for the European Championship as well.
Yeah, the European Championships is normally, 8 or 10 races where the cumulative points count towards the final result. But this is a new departure now with the Star Sailors League that, you know, there are quarterfinals, semi-finals, and then finals. So it's a new format, and I think it's a format that the class have embraced, and it'll just end up in a fantastic shootout on Sunday afternoon. So it should be great.
Okay, well, let's go and chat to Giancarlo Crevatin, the principal race officer, for his intentions for today.
So our intentions is to start with the event, sailing 2 races in this good wind that is coming from south to around 10-15 knots, and so these are not good and local proper conditions, but the wind is good, so we are trying to sail our program.
Okay, I mean, it's cold. I'm feeling the cold. So what sort of breeze do we have?
The breeze is very cold. We have snow on the mountain hall here around. This night also we have a new snow, and so it's pretty cold. It's not end of May. It's quite March, but the wind is good, and so that is what we need.
That's great. And give us an idea for the course length from.
Yeah. We are going to set a very long course, around just quite less than 2 miles for the first bit, and after a smaller run at around 1.5, and so another bit, and the finishing run that around 2 miles. The finishing line will be downwind from the starting line, so the finish will be in a big and interesting run.
And finally, with your 2 races, what sort of turnover time are you looking at?
We are fixed the course to have a race of around 1 hour. So in 2 hours, 2 hours and a half, I think that we can come back ashore.
That is the intention today from Giancarlo. Good to hear it straight from, as we say in English, the horse's mouth.
Yes, it's interesting, a couple of things, Digby, that he said there. The first upwind leg, which is going to be the leg directly after the start, is going to be 2 miles long. And that's long, you know, that's going to be a very, very tough physical leg for the sailors. But the race officer has no choice, because with 96 boats, if you had the leg any shorter, then there would be carnage at the first mark. So it gives the chance, a little bit of a chance to, it gives the fleet a chance to spread out. And then, as he said, the following leg after that, where they're going to be running downwind in front of the wind, he's going to shorten that up to 1.5 miles. So I think he said in his target there that he was going to have the first race for 1 hour. And it'll be very interesting to see if he manages to get that race in 96 boats around the racecourse in an hour. It's quite a challenge for the race officer.
Well, Shirley Robertson is our on-water commentator, but just before she and all the boats left the harbour, she caught up with some of the top contenders for their thoughts going into the first race.
Well, we've come here for a reason, and that reason is the wind nearly always blows, and today Lake Garda is not disappointing. The guys are just getting ready to go out and to face this strong easterly breeze, and we're going to have a chat with a few of them before they go. It's Paul Kerr. Paul Kerr, just before you hop on, boat number 1, prime spot.
Prime spot, yeah. Well, the only spot that matters is whatever spot I'm in on Sunday, so.
Now, we heard you've been taking it rather seriously. Brand new boat for this, in training, in good shape. How do you feel? What are your chances?
Well, I hope to be fighting it out on Sunday, you know. Top 10 move on to the elimination series, so. But it's going to be a very hard regatta. I mean, no one expected wind today. All of a sudden there's wind. 94 boats means a lot of mixing, so it's going to be important to stay consistent and not get down on yourself if things kind of go against you here. Just keep fighting all the way to the end. We're supposed to have 10 races before the qualifications, so I think we'll all be plenty tired.
We're looking forward to seeing the battle. Good luck.
Thanks.
Let's see who else we can find. Lars, it's not quite the Brazilian weather you're used to. Bit chilly today.
Chilly, né? Extremely cold, and it's blowing hard, so we feel like sailing in winter time. But it's going to be a tough competition, very high level, and I'll try to do my best. It won't be easy.
I mean, we can't really complain. It's called the Breeze Grand Slam. We came here for a reason, and boy, the lake is delivering today.
Sure. No, it's blowing hard. It's been very radical in the last few days. or you get nothing of wind, or is really strong wind. But today is better than yesterday. Yesterday was blowing like 25 knots, so today is something average 20 knots, so good enough to sail, but cold.
Well, keep warm. We look
Thank
forward to
you.
watching it. Good luck, Lars.
Thank you.
Who else have we got? Henry, I'll have a quick chat with you, one of the crews, sailing with Robert Scheid. We've not seen him yet this morning, but he's taken it pretty seriously.
Maybe today is a good race. Very good condition, but it's cold. Yeah, very cold. But no problem. It's the good things. It's okay.
Yeah, you got the dry suit on. I mean, for sure, Robert must be seen as the favourite here. You know, he lives locally. He's training hard also for the Olympics. You know, how are you feeling at the start of this long week?
It's very difficult, long week. Too much guys, very good sailors. It's a Luff, it's a Mateus, Augie. It's too much guys. Heavy, very heavy in this fleet.
Well, for sure, the crews are going to be working hard. But you've got the right kit on in his dry suit for today. Let's see who else is around. I've spotted Robert Scheid. He lives here, he trains here. Robert, a quick word. A bit colder today than we're used to, but great breeze.
Yes, a bit colder weather, but it is what it is. You know, we got really good conditions out there. And I think once the race starts, nobody will feel cold anyway.
I mean, you know, everyone's pitching you as the favourite here. You know, second in the final in Nassau. You live here, you train here. You know the lake well.
Yeah, well, it's easy to call somebody the favorite, but the hard thing is to go out there and beat these guys. You know, it's a very strong field, and yeah, we're gonna do our best. Hopefully, we can use our local knowledge, but there's 90 boats out there, so we have to start well and do the right things.
It's not often in sailing now you sail in such massive fleets. You know, how do you approach that? What's the strategy?
Well, I think you have to try to sail 3 lanes, you know, try to avoid the masses, try to avoid the early mistakes in the race. Maybe if you're around the top mark in 15th place, it's still a good position. You can work your way up, and you know, finishing the top 10 would be a great score in this kind of race.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Well, Shirley there catching up with Robert Scheid and some of the top names here. And it's fantastic to see Robert.
Yes, I mean, he would be a hero figure to many young sailors around the world. He's one of the few people who has won Olympic medals in 2 different classes, both the laser class and the star class. And at the age of 43, he narrowly missed out on bronze in Rio in 2016. And he's going again for Tokyo next year in the laser. So it's a real treat to be able to watch Robert sailing.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a little flavour for the atmosphere and the conditions out there on the water. We're in a postponement. They are expecting to have the warning signal in around 12 minutes. There was a big parking jam, traffic jam, trying to get out of the harbour, hence a slight delay to proceedings by Giancarlo Cravatin, our PRO, Principal Race Officer. But, Prof, that's a good breeze, hey?
Yeah, no, it's less breeze than yesterday. Yesterday we probably had just slightly more than 20 knots. It looks to me that it's blowing about 16 or 17 knots out there, so it'll be very, very exciting sailing. Tough upwind conditions, some short choppy waves, but downwind we should still see those stars really getting going. But yeah, really solid breeze.
Well, it is the Breeze Grand Slam. It's the first ever Breeze Grand Slam. And if you're new to the Star Sailors League, the idea is very much based on the ATP Tennis Tour, where they have a Grand Slam on clay, on grass, and so on. Here we have the Breeze one in the windy conditions that we can see out here. We've had one in Hamburg, which is the City Grand Slam. And we're going to have a Bay Grand Slam, which is the Bacardi Cup, which is every year. That is now combined. And the then it builds up to the Masters, which is the finals, the SSL finals in Bahamas, which they've run over the past 6 years. Now, one of the characters who's very much part of the Star Sailors League is Fritjof Kleen, known as Frida to everybody knows him, this kind of larger-than-life German who has become the SSL sports director. And I had a little chance to get onto the rib and get some wind in my hair and get a feel for conditions out there on the water. Let's hear from Frida.
Morning, boys. Welcome to Villa Brunelli. Let's go. We have a busy day in the SSL training center. Let's get going. So now we're here in Fraglia Villa Riva, the club of the Star Sailors League training center. We're here to not only prepare for the SSL finals every year, because all the finalists can come here and train and use the Star Sailors League boats. They are provided. We have sails provided by Fritz Sails. We have Negri Nautica helping with hardware. We have coaches like Christian Rasmussen, Fabio Zeni, Kilian Weise. Now you can also stay 100 meters away from here in Villa Brunelli. We have 20 beds for all the sailors, but also the amateur sailors can come here, train with the pros. Altogether, it's a great help for not only the SSL finalists, but also for the star class sailors around the globe to come and prepare in this beautiful lake. We have a physiotherapist, we have a personal coach, so everything happens here in Fraglia Villa Riva and the beautiful city of Riva del Garda, and of course great evenings in restaurants and famous bar Pabaloca.
Here at the training center, SSL training center, we had some great experience, and last time we were so well trained that next race we won, so we were very excited about that, and that's the reason also we are always coming back here.
The SSL training center here is working really well. Have many sessions per year, many young sailors coming and joining as well, which is very positive, and I'm really happy that I'm able to take part this time, and I'm really enjoying the days that we're training here.
The setup here is great. We've got chandleries, we've got physios, we've got guys helping set the boats up. We've got good level coaching, so it's great. And this morning we sailed in the northerly breeze, got a decent session in. Looks like the breeze is going to turn round, then we can sail in the southerly breeze in the afternoon. So it's a really good place to get some good hours on the water.
So Lake Garda, very central to the Star Sailors League, Prof, and this is where they're training up the people from like the Laser class, the 470s, and characters like Loic Peyron, a legend in setting offshore world records, to then get accustomed and acclimatized to the Star.
Yes, yeah, it's a iconic sailing venue. Every year there is an Optimus class regatta for kids, and that regatta often attracts more than 1,000 young sailors. So it's a venue that, if you're lucky to have the chance to sail in, it can provide a lifetime of championship sailing. So it really is a super venue for training for much of the year.
Well, in fact, their Optimist regatta attracted 1,400 boats last year, which was another Guinness World Record, and the club is really proud of that, actually. Talking to Giuseppe Di Mattia, the race manager, who is kind of floats above and makes sure it all happens. He involves all the clubs around here, and they're really, really proud. And they're so proud to have this first ever SSL Breeze Grand Slam.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get a bit of geography and fly up Lake Garda from the south to the north. We're going from south to north, all the way along the lake, which narrows towards the top of the lake. The little town on the left is Riva, Torboli, the little town on the right, separated by that a small ridge and a tunnel. And there is our racetrack, up and down. So breeze coming from the south, the start line to the north, nearer the shore side, and 2 nautical miles, approximately 2 nautical miles. And talking to some of the sailors, you know, if they make it any less than about 2 nautical miles, it just becomes a little bit crazy around the top mark. So we are minutes away from the warning signal of the first ever race. We are 1:15, and the warning signal will come in under 5 minutes. On the water, our commentator Shirley Robertson. Shirley, we're seeing the postponement come down, the orange flag go up, so we're not far off a procedure. But Shirley, you have the wind in your hair, and you can give us a real feel for conditions out there.
Well, Digby, the next gun you're just about to hear now is 4 minutes to go to race 1, and it's great conditions out here. I mean, it's cold, really dense air. It's blowing, I don't know, between 16 and 20 knots, and with 94 stars, it is quite a sight. You can sort of feel the tension though, because, you know, it's quite a small start line. You know, we're sailing on a lake. There's not a vast sea to kind of spread your wings, and it's going to be really tight racing. And if you're going to be in that all-important top 10 at the end, you know, you're going to have to sail tactically very well.
The temperature is really significant because it's 14 degrees Celsius, but the wind chill's really cutting through. And, you know, just even talking to the race officer out there, it was seriously cold. How are they going to survive out there, Shirley?
Well, Digby, I think they'll be fine. It's me you should feel sorry for, sitting in the rib. You know, it's going to be really physical. And I think, you know, we need to make that point. As Prof said, it's a 2-mile beat, and these boats are, you know, they're not for the faint-hearted. You have to work them hard, and if you're going to be at the top of the fleet by Mark 1, you really, you know, you're going to be sweating, you're going to be working hard. So I think for the sailors, they've forgotten all about the cold, but for the race officer and for me, you know, we need a little sympathy.
Okay, you have all our sympathy, Shirley, but exciting, Prof, to just be within minutes of that first start gun for the first ever SSL Breeze Grand Slam and the Star European Championship. The nerves must be really jangling out there amongst the fleets, and I'm going to put money on a general recall for the first one because, you know, they'll be so pumped.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like the start of every regatta that you sail in. The nerves are probably always a little bit higher than they would be, you know, once the regatta gets started. But it's interesting what Shirley was saying about the cold. There was an enterprising young gentleman set up a stall outside the yacht club this morning, and he was selling extra thermal gear and wetsuit gloves. And I'd say he made out like a bandit this morning, Digby. So, but as Shirley said, once the 5-minute gun goes, you tend to forget about the body temperature, and the adrenaline starts firing, and you just get into race mode, and everybody will be fully focused now on trying to get the best start possible. Will there be a general recall? Hard to know. But yeah, I wouldn't doubt that there may be.
Okay, well, the live pictures from out there on Lake Garda, the star flag flying proudly, and that is the line. We can actually, we've got a good visual right down that start line between the 2 orange flags. So well done to our camera boats for getting right there, and bang, 1 minute to go. So we are 1 minute to the start of the first Star European Championship race, the qualifying series, and the boats jostling around, still quite well disciplined behind the line there, Prof.
Yeah, you can see in towards the middle of the line, there's a big line sag where it's more difficult to judge where the start line is. So there are quite a few boat lengths back, but up towards the committee boat, which is the anchored boat with the flags, the boats are closer to the line because it's easier to judge. So the skill will be trying to hit the line at full speed, going in the direction that you want to go without breaking the line too early. And if you break the line too early, you may risk a recall in that your bow number gets called and you have to restart, which is a disaster. But everybody's just trying to get to the line on the gun at full speed, and there they go.
Okay, well, that is it. The start, the flag going down, and across the line they go. Lovely start by the Italians on bow 56 there, just poking their nose ahead. Davide Lerdini and Sebastian Marozzai. Paul Kayard, he's out there, bow number 1 with his gold star on the sail, just tacking over. And Shirley Paul just getting out of a little bit of trouble there.
I think, generally on the lake, you want to go to the right-hand side. So tactically, he was really smart, quite a conservative start at the committee boat. He has all the options. He could carry on if he wanted to, or he could head to the right. And beautiful start. I mean, I think Paul really has come here feeling pretty pumped about this event and really wanting to do well. The surprise boat for me, and confusingly, they have a Croatian sail number. It's bow number 5, Torvar Murski, former match racing world champion. And to me, he won the start in the middle of the line. And, he wants to show what he's made of here, and he wants to compete with the very best. And great start by him.
Well, Torvar Murski is an invitee. He's a VIP. He was asked to come and see if he fancied having a go at racing in the Star at the Europeans. He's match racing world champ in 2017, and that was in the M32 catamaran. So this is a very, very different discipline for Torvar, sailing with experienced crewman Ian Coleman, a great far 40 sailor. So looking now at 59, Fabian McGowan. Away they go, poking their nose ahead. Bow 13 was looking there in the mix. Roberto Benamati and Alberto Ambrosini. But super start by Paul Kayard, and he is in a new boat. He just christened his new Foley boat a couple of days ago, and it's all shiny. I jumped on board, and it's really beautiful. They were just trimming, and it had that real new boat feel. So he's going to be feeling extra kind of confident in that new boat there. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that start, Digby. As Shirley said, getting to the right-hand side of the race course in this wind direction in Garda is generally strategically and tactically the best way to go. And you could see the calibre of the fleet, that all the gold stars on the top of the mainsails indicate that these are former world champions. And I think I just counted briefly in the shot 4 gold stars that had started the race towards the windward end of the line, and all those guys are trying to tack onto the port tack and get over to the right-hand side of the race course as quickly as they can, because that's where the wind tends to converge off the cliff. You get a little bit stronger wind off the cliff, and you also get a little bit of a change in wind direction, which allows you to draw ahead of the boats on the left-hand side. So you can see Paul Kayard here. He's got the hammer down over to the right-hand side. Really, really decisive, got the boat onto port tack as quickly as possible, and he's heading hard for the cliff. So it'll be really interesting when he gets to the corner, when he tacks, to see will he be ahead. But just looking at the display here now on screen, you can already see that he's drawn ahead of the fleet. So it's a very early marker of Kayard's intentions for this regatta.
Well, we have some onboard cameras as well. Lars Grail, he's out there, and he's also heading right. Lars, the Star Class president over the past few years, and there he is. I think we're on board with him at the back there, and he's sailing with Pedro Trusch, and Lars, a 2-time medalist, Star World Champ in 2015, and a great competitor. He was telling us that perhaps this is his last major regatta, because he's got an awful lot of other things going on, but we'll see from Lars Grail. And there he is at the back, just having a little chat to Pedro, and going nicely.
Yeah, Lars is a double Olympic medalist in the catamaran tornado class in '88 in Seoul and '96 in Atlanta. But he and his brother Torben are doyens of the Star class as well. Torben is a 5-time Olympic medalist in 2 different classes, so they come from a spectacularly successful sailing family. And you can see other world champion 84-23 from the USA. That's Eric Doyle, who won the Bacardi Cup this year. And again, a team that are looking to put down an early marker in this first race as well, Digby.
Okay, so our first leg beginning to take shape as the boats weave their way up to the first top mark. The race course is a windward-leeward course with 4 legs, effectively 2 laps, up and down, and they will finish downwind, as the race officer was telling us earlier. And he's setting a top mark distance of around 2 nautical miles. Now, if they decreased that top mark distance and they pulled it a bit closer to have a shorter race, it would just be a little bit more chaotic with so many boats, 95, 96 boats, trying to get round. They're all going to get up there at a similar time, so at least 2 nautical miles is kind of almost there for safety. So Cayard and Lopez doing a grand job up there near the front. Roberto Benamati, Alberto Ambrosini, they're in the mix there, as are Turner and Sukau, looking over on the other side of the lake. Well, Shirley will be working her way up on the camera boat. She is with one of our cameras and probably hammering up the right-hand side, Shirley. But for us, it's still Cayard out there in the lead. On the far side of the course, we have the German of Daniel Fritz and Arnie Boltins from the USA. Arnie, a long-time crew in the Star class, a really big fella, very nice, but they clearly like the left-hand side. And Arnie was 4th at the Star Worlds with Augie Diaz. And Daniel Fritz, a sail maker for Fritz Segern and son of Werner Fritz, so they're a class act as well. And Paul Cayard, we're seeing as well, he won the Whitbread race, now the Volvo Ocean race, or now just the Ocean race, I think it's called, but effectively the pro crewed round the world race in 97-98 on EF language. So a small boat champion and big boat aficionado, and one of the best known sailors in the world. Fabian McGowan there with Juan Pablo Picosa on bow 59. They are also poking out ahead in some clean air.
It's really interesting here, Digby. We have a split fleet scenario here where you have quite a chunk of the fleet heading to the left-hand cliff and the majority of the fleet heading to the right-hand cliff. So usually the right-hand side of the course is favoured, but it will be interesting to see what happens the guys on the left when they decide to cross back. My money is still on the right-hand side, but right now it's pretty close in the extremes. Well, my sense is that the guys on the left, when they decide to cross back, that they will probably drop behind a little bit, but it'll be all to play for next in the next 5 to 8 minutes when the guys on the right decide to cross back. It was also interesting to see Roberto Benamati, former world champion, local sailor as well, and he's got one of the oldest sail numbers there in the fleet, 7488, and that's the sail number I think that he used when he won the world championships back in the day. And like a lot of sailors, they're a little bit superstitious, and he uses that sail number on every sail and every boat that he's owned ever since. So he's back in the class again now, and will be reveling in these conditions that he knows so well.
Well, Lars Grail also out there on the racetrack. I'd say 90% of the fleet have gone right, 10% heading off to the left, and you know, the numbers don't lie. It looks like everybody wants to head over towards those cliffs on the right-hand side. Chatting to a local coach, local laser coach here, Fabio Zaini, he was saying he really likes to race in these kind of conditions because it's a little bit more tactical. Shirley, I imagine you are towards the cliffs on the right-hand side and getting a good view of some of the leading runners and riders out there.
Digby, I'm right beside the cliffs. We might be squashed by... Like the right is already pulling ahead. Been very impressed.
Well, beg your pardon, Shirley, if you can hear me. We lost your signal there, potentially because you've kind of gone round a corner from direct line of sight from where we are. So I'll come back to you in a second as the boats tack up towards the cone into the middle of the lake. But, Prof, we can see Kayard, Lopez, Scheid and Björning on virtual eye, giving us a really clear view of what's going on overhead. And Kayard and Lopez in a really good spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to play out now. You can see a lot of the main players are heading to the cliffs, and that's where they'll be hoping to get that wind advantage of the breeze strengthening, but also shifting in their direction as they get close to the cliffs. The trackers there show them being lifted or turning to the left as the breeze is turning left a little bit. But I would expect that when they get in close, they'll get that final shift against them, and then they'll be tacking over to try and lay the windward mark. The guys, the digital display shows that the guys on the left are technically reasonably level with Kayard, but as I say, I would expect it to start to play out, that the right will start to play through. We can also see world champion Elvin Melby. He's over there on the right, as is the Italian
Diego Negri with Fritjof Clean.
With Fritjof Clean and the Robert Scheid, who, as we saw before, is taking this event very, very seriously indeed. Robert lives here locally with his family and his Olympic medalist wife, and is very, very familiar with the location here. So again, it was all about getting the boat onto port tack directly after the start and then trying to play the right-hand side as hard as you can.
Well, okay, the windsurfers also enjoying the conditions out on the lake. Robin Noltz Fransen from Germany, sailing with Andy Nolt Fransen and sail number 7971. They're in a good spot there. Club racers, they'll be really, really happy with that. But we have, you know, some usual suspects in the mix towards the front of the right-hand pack there of Kayard, Scheid and Negri, Diego Negri. Negri, I mean, Diego, Italian, he's been sailing with Sergio Lambertenghi, who's also racing out there on the track. Those Italian sailors know this lake like the back of their hand.
Oh, they do, absolutely. And you can already see the leaders have now tacked onto starboard tack as they've come into the cliffs, and you can see the tracker is now showing them to be significantly ahead of the guys on the left. Kayard went as far as he dared, and then he's tacked onto starboard tack where the wind is coming from the right hand side, and between Negri and Kayard, just picking them up now, and Diego Negri is slightly ahead and coming in from the right, looking very, very strong indeed. Roberto Bernati to windward of Diego Negri is also looking very, very strong, and just looking to pick up Paul Kayard now and his crew Arthur Lopez. I can't quite see them on the tracker, but I would expect they're probably in the top 2 or 3 right now. Oh, there we are, yeah. So Kayard is there to windward of Negri, and it looks like Negri first at the moment, but Kayard second. But interestingly, Kayard is further to the right-hand side and closer to the cliff, so it'll be interesting to see if the breeze shifts to the right and pulls Kayard up and around Diego Negri. So they've got the hammer down now, hiking hard and really getting up into the top half of this upwind leg, where things will start to close up as they get closer to the windward mark.
So the few boats, the dozen boats or so who are heading out to the left-hand side, struggling a little bit on virtual, but we're looking at Shane Zvingelberg and Luke Morton from the States there. going up nicely. Wind with bow 59, Fabian McGowan and Juan Pablo Pocosi. They're in the mix there as well. Those guys from Argentina made a long trip over for the Europeans. And we should explain that even though this is a European championship and sailing for a European Cup, it is open to the world, and there are quite a few competitors from Argentina, the USA, even Australia with Torva Mersky, and with the parade through the town yesterday for the opening ceremony. They were flying the flags from around the world. It's very international fleet.
Yeah, it's wonderful. The Star class sailors from all over the world in Australia, South America, Europe, North America. The class is extremely popular and has a very, very strong following all over the world. So it's truly international. I think, was it 22 countries that are represented here this week, Digby?
Yeah.
But it's wonderful. The opening ceremony last night in the town centre in Riva, where each of the teams carried their national flag and paraded through the town to the ceremony in the town square. And it was a very jolly occasion with a lot of people speaking a lot of different languages, and some would know each other from racing against each other in the circuit around the world. And it was a great catch-up time before we drop into the competition today.
Well, Shirley, we'll be making our way into the course now, just getting off the cliffs. And Shirley, Virtual Eye is giving us bow number 9, Diego Negri and Fritjof Clean as the leaders.
Well, Digby, I can't see from here. You're right, we're just barreling our way up to the top mark. The boats have all left the cliffs there. You know, it's a really physical place to sail. It's quite a distinctive chop, and I think we're really seeing the guys who are used to sailing on the lake really extending on this long upwind. It's all about boat speed.
Okay, well, Shirley out there in the elements, and she'll be up with the fleet as they go around that top mark. Lars Grail, bow number 4. He's in that mix there. Great result by Alexei Zhivotovsky and Lev Schneer from Russia, bow 94. They'll be delighted with that position on race number 1. Looking cool. They're in the top 20, I think, and away they go.
It's interesting looking at the VT here now, Digby. It looks to me as if the wind has strengthened a lot.
Live pictures.
Yep, the waves are just the tops of the waves now have got little white caps, which means that the wind speed is possibly closer to 20 knots, and it's blowing the tops of the waves. So there's a real acceleration of wind over here on the right-hand side, and that's why this side of the racecourse is so favoured compared to the left-hand side. But the sailors then have to adjust their various controls, controlling their mast, controlling their sails, to change the shape of the sails into flatter, more twisted shapes so that they can depower that enormous rig on the Star and keep the boat under control. And I guess that's what is the attraction of the Star, in that it's such a technical class. You have to have a lot of talent and experience to be able to adjust those controls in response to changes in wind speed and in changes to the sea state of the water, whether it is flat or choppy. So big change in weather conditions a little bit over on this right hand side as they're drawing in towards the windward mark.
Okay, well, our camera boats just trying to get ahead of the fleet for the top mark rounding. We're seeing Riva in the background, the town of Riva del Garda. And here's a bit of geography from Virtual Eye. And they're approaching the cone, that little triangle of excitement just underneath the top mark with the theoretical ley lines. The wind is coming from south to north, so it's flying up the lake from the valleys in northern Italy towards the mountains, but the air is so cold It's been snowing over the last few days, snowing up in the mountain tops, and just walking around you can really feel the cold temperature. But Diego Negri and Fritjof Clean getting a little bit of a lead now from Virtual Eye over Kayard and Lopez. Scheid and Björning in that mix, as well as Eivind Melleby and Josh Revkin, who are both ranked #1 on the Star Sailors League ranking. So we'd expect them to be up there, world champs, and absolutely on form and on fire. Lennart and Kushnir in that mix, as we see bow number 3, Robert Scheid with Henry Björning. There, Robert with his distinctive Banco de Brasilia hat. He always wears that hat for sailing and interviews, and that has been a loyal sponsor for Robert for several years. The list of Robert's achievements is bonkers, you know, having won 12, in fact now 13 World Championship titles, 3 in stars is crazy, 5 Olympic medals, 2 golds in the laser, 2 silvers in the laser and star, and a bronze in the star. And now he's going for another laser campaign, and he told me in the little yacht club cafe that it was absolutely going to be his last Olympic bid, because the star is no longer in there, which is helpful for the older sailors, but it's going into a kind of more youth-orientated games. Robert now 46, 47. You know, he has to have a full-time physio just to keep him going.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like any other Olympic sport, Digby. There's only so long that you can do it for, and there are some exceptional athletes, and Robert is one of them. The Star is a race boat that can suit the older sailor once they keep themselves immensely physically strong. It doesn't require quite the same degree of flexibility and dynamism, let's say, that the 49er skiff requires, or perhaps even the laser. So older athletes can do very, very well in the Star because it's a more static type of load on the body than some of the lighter, smaller dinghies.
Well, we're seeing Diego Negri at the back of the boat with Fritjof Clean, the SSL sports director, approaching that top mark. Perhaps we can patch into Shirley. Negri and Clean, a very nice lead for these guys.
Very nice lead, Digby. I mean, great boat speed, and I mean, I guess, you know, they know this end of the lake extremely well. Frida lives here. You know, they're used to the chop and the wind conditions, and they sailed that beautifully. A lovely lead, a good sort of 100 metres on Paul Kayard and Arthur Lopez, who've just gone round now.
Okay, so Kayard and Lopez in second, and Benamati and Ambrosini coming around in third spot. Italian class fleet, Robert Scheid going through there. He's followed by Tom Lofsted from Sweden and Anders Ekstrom, the Olympian, previous Star Olympian. Then Eivind Melleby and Josh Revkin in that mix, followed by Mateusz Kuznirovic sailing with Federico Mello, who was in the past Volvo Ocean Race.
Yes, Mateusz, one of the youngest ever Olympic medalists, age 21 in Atlanta, and we're now just seeing
Eric Doyle.
Eric Doyle, Bacardi Cup and former world champion, and the Irish team of Peter O'Leary and Robert O'Leary. Peter, of course, being an Olympian in 2008 and 2012.
And surely not quite the massive raft up that we were expecting with 96 boats on one racetrack.
Well, it was pretty busy at the cliff, Digby. It was chaos. It was chaos in there, particularly in the middle of the pack. But you're right. I think particularly with only, you know, sort of one way to go, they've managed to sort of spread out a little bit. And it was a really long beat, longer than we're used to, really. I think what will be interesting now is this long downwind, and remember back to watching Robert Scheidt in Nassau really pull the distance on the downwind, and we'll see if he'll manage to propel himself to the front of the fleet here.
Okay, Shirley, well, as you will make your way downwind, hopefully you're not going to get trapped on this downwind leg, but the leaders, Negri and Clean, Kayard and Lopez, beginning to pull away from the rest of the pack. They read that first upwind beat absolutely perfectly, heading out, tacking off from that start line, out towards the right-hand side as they looked up the racetrack, and as the rest of the fleet come barreling around that top pair, Madsen. And here it is, super busy. 34, Daniel Della Torre and Gerardo Della Torre, the Argentinians, on board with Lars Grail there. And here we see them on the downwind leg. Just Lars is sailing with Pedro Trusch, a youngster, who he's bringing into the Star, and good energy. And we should mention, just talking about Lars, that he lost a leg, and you know, he's happy talking about it, but in a terrible accident a few years ago with a rib ran over him in 1998. So after his tornado medals, you know, a real prospect, he lost a leg, and he's you know, sailing with one leg, which is fantastic. Good on him. Okay, so on our jibes downwind, Thomas Hornos with Ed Mori, an American crew there on their way down, and now about halfway down the run. There is the leading pack with Kayard, Lopez in the mix there, just behind the Italians, Negri with the German Fritschoff Clean. So good battle at the front.
Yeah, what's interesting here, Digby, is that because the right-hand side of the race course was so dominant on the upwind leg, when the fleet went around the second mark and the third offset mark, they jibed immediately to try and get back over on the cliff side going down this downwind leg. Robert Scheidt is a master of downwind sailing, having honed his skills in the waters in Brazil, and I would expect him to push very hard from fourth to try and pick off a spot and get into third at this bottom mark. But Diego is holding off Kayard very nicely at this point, but very physical downwind as well for the helmsman on the Star, because the mainsail is so big and there is so much pressure on it, piling the boat downwind in front of the breeze. So it'll be very interesting now to see if Scheidt can pull through some distance, and you can see that he is splitting a little bit, heading a little bit lower than the rest of the fleet, and he is a master at getting just that little bit lower and that little bit faster, and that's generally a better trajectory towards the leeward gate. So we will see as they come down to the gate who starts to look good.
Well, Robert Scheidt, training on this lake, is the master of downwind sailing in whatever boat he is in. And you know, part of his training is that he can head downwind before lunch, go and have lunch, wait for the wind to switch as it does with the thermal conditions, the usual thermal conditions, and then do a bit more downwind. But as you so rightly say, he's one of the best downwind sailors in the world, sailing on his home waters in a boat that he absolutely loves, with a fantastic crewman, Henry Björning. And now he's getting a little bit of separation from Benemati and Ambrosini, and he will be attacking those front two before you know it. We're getting down towards the bottom gate, and we will see the bottom gate marking. Guys going around, they can choose to go left or right, but they must go through the middle. And downwind, a little bit of respite from hiking out from the upwind leg.
Yes and no, Digby. You know, the muscle groups that you're using downwind are different from those that you're using upwind. Upwind, you've got your feet underneath the hiking straps and you're leaning your body weight out over the side of the boat. Downwind, you tend to be sitting more vertically in the boat and holding on to the sheet, which is the rope controlling the mainsail, and it's just a little bit of a different set of muscles, but it is still pretty physical because you just have to manhandle the boat down the waves. So it's just a different type of energy that's used to sailing the boat downwind than upwind.
So Diego Negri on the helm, he has actually more work to do, I would say, because he's pulling in the main sheet with that massive boom and mainsail, and Fritjof Frida is up by the mast, keeping the bow down and the stern out of the water.
Yeah, like Fritzof's role here is to look backwards and to assess where the fleet are, and to also look at the gusts of wind that are blowing up the lake and trying to help Diego position the boat so that the boat is going to receive the gusts of wind before the competition, and trying to get the boat going as fast as it can in those gusts. The crew also has to balance the boat very, very carefully with their weight on either foot, and that balance of the boat really, really helps in terms of the speed. And here you can see Lopez, Paul Cairds' crew, shifting forwards a little bit to help the boat down the wave, and then shifting backwards a little bit as the front of the boat, or the bow of the boat, piles into the wave in front. And just moving forward and moving backwards, moving left and moving right, really, really helps with the speed of the boat. And that's the skill of sailing these boats, is to be responsive to every little wave and every little gust, and trying to keep the boat absolutely on the money in terms of the waves and the wind.
It's a great shot. You can just see Paul kind of riding the rhythm of those waves.
Yeah, you can see that, you know, a certain amount of rocking, which is the boat, you know, rolling to the left and rolling to the right, is really fast. Too much is slow because it's a waste of energy, but you're trying to just get the rhythm of the boat rocking up and down in concert with the waves, in concert with the body weight. You can see Paul's left hand there is controlling the main sheet, and that's pulling that enormous mainsail in and out, and just trying to get the trim and the set and the angle of that boom absolutely bang on with respect to the wind, and really getting the most out of this boat. So it's a tricky boat to sail in these gusty conditions because there's just so much power in the rig.
Well, Negri and Clean still ahead, but I would say Caird and Lopez staying in touch with the leaders. And as we were talking about earlier, Scheid and Björning, it looks like they have blown off the Italians in that little drag race there, Benamati and Ambrosini. So there is Robert Scheid on the helm to the right at the back of the boat. Henry just helping to haul in that mainsail. It look like they're going for a jibe? I'm not sure.
They jibed for a short period of time onto starboard. I think that was probably to get away from the disturbed wind coming from Benamati, and that short jibe where they cleared their wind and then they've jibed back again, they've just blasted through Benamati, and I think we'll see Scheid pulling through to third, going around this gate. So that's a pretty ominous sign that Scheid is really on the money going downwind, and I expect that he'll go round the gate in third, and then Scheid will just be trying to hang on the next upwind, because the right hand side is so very, very favoured that he probably won't be able to get past Caird or Negri in the upwind, but he'll just be trying to stay in contact on the upwind so that he can try and pile the pressure on the next downwind.
Well, here are our race leaders. Race number 1 of the SSL Breeze Grand Slam. Fritjof Clean, the big German, the crewman, setting up the jib, moving the mast. Diego Negri now sliding around the bottom gate, predictably heading to the right-hand side. I think all these guys are going to head out to the right-hand side, and chasing them where in with Kayard and Björning. Just coming around that mark, following through. And Kayard still in touch. And third place is Scheid with Björning. Shirley, whereabouts are you on the course?
We're right in the thick of the action, just watching Robert Scheid and Henry Björning go around the mark. And definitely the right-hand boy looking at it. Obviously, they want to go to the right-hand side, but obviously, and also it is the favoured side. So I think you're right. It's going to be about getting a good rounding here, managing to hold your lane and get all the way into the cliffs.
Tom Lofsted, Anders Ekstrom, the Swedish duo. Two fantastic sailors in that mix.
Yeah,
well,
it was just we just caught in camera there Benamati and his crew just made a little error going around the bottom mark where they didn't get the rig back properly, didn't get those complex controls changed in time, and that allowed Krishnerovic to pounce. And yeah, a bit of an issue here on the French boat as well.
Xavier Rohart, Pierre, Alexis Ponceau having trouble with their forestay, it looked like. It was flapping away and not in tidy form. So slight slip up from the French duo.
There's a lot on Digby in these conditions in the starboat at the leeward mark. Because you have to get this enormous rig back from leaning over the bow to leaning backwards over the stern. There's about 5 or 6 different control lines that you need to adjust to make that happen. And if you don't make it happen in the correct order, you can have a very, very messy bottom mark rounding. But if you don't get them, if you get some of them wrong, you can actually break the mast. So it's a tricky maneuver in the strong conditions, and we just saw Benamati and Rohart made a little error, and that allowed Peter O'Leary and his brother Robert to pass Rohart and Krishnerovic to pass out Benamati. So I think there'll be a few changes in the sort of 4th, 5th, 6th places in this race following that bottom mark.
Okay, well, we can see that again, actually. And yeah,
just here.
Looking at Rohart bow 8.
Yeah, they didn't manage to get the mast back. The jib is still up in the air. They didn't get the jib Cunningham on. And, you know, if you don't get those things done on time and the boat behind does, well, then they'll shoot through. And
well, that was Eric Doyle, Payson, Infeliz from the USA, taking the opportunity to pass Rohart and Ponceau. Xavier Rohart now looks like he had to tack away, actually, to get some clean air.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately the knock-on effect of having a poor leeward mark rounding when you've got a race course that's very heavily favoured to one side, is that you have to tack to clear your air. And obviously when you tack, you're going to the left-hand side, which is not the way you want to go. So not only have you lost ground because of the error, but you've put yourself on the incorrect trajectory to the left, which further loses you ground. So the boat handling, just going around the corners in the Star class, has to be crisp and perfect so that it puts you in a good position so that you can execute your strategy of getting to the right at all costs.
Here with the race leaders, Diego Negri and Fritjof Clean in a lovely rhythm upwind. Diego usually sailing with Sergio Lambertenghi, but Sergio runs a hotel and everything, has an awful lot of other stuff to do. So they've teamed up together, Fritjof and Diego, and away they go some 40 meters ahead of Kayard and Lopez, and Scheid and Björning in third position. Benamati, Ambrosini in fourth, Kuznerovic and Mello fifth. Lenhart and Kushner sixth, Melyaby and Revkin seven, Rohart Ponceau dropping back to eighth, but still in that top 10. Doyle, Infeliz in ninth, and Diaz and Prada in 10th spot at the moment.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, you can see how bouncy and choppy and rough it is. Their visibility is not fantastic. As we're looking at it from our chase boat, it looks pretty grey. Shirley is out there, probably getting quite wet at the moment, Shirley.
Well, we're heading towards the cliffs with the rest of the Star fleet. I mean, it is breezy and it is particularly choppy, particularly on the right-hand side of the course. I guess what we're seeing is the real big names, the experience in this fleet, just really stretching their legs, and it's impressive to see. Actually, the fleet is so spread out, but the guys that we expect to be at the front really relishing in these conditions.
Okay, Kayard, winner of that round, the world race, the Whitbread, then the Volvo, now just called the Ocean Race, which a few of us on the team worked in on the last few editions. Fascinating. And our camera boats getting a bit of a pasting as they go up through the chop. You can see the white caps. And the leaders, the sailboat's probably having a better ride out of it than the ribs.
Yeah, it is very, very choppy out there, very wet, and it's interesting when you're sailing upwind in the choppy seas like this. It requires a little bit of a different technique in that it's really, really important that you don't try and sail the boat at as tight an angle to the wind as you would do if the water was very flat, because the closer that you try and sail to the wind, the slower the boat goes. So what the sailors will be trying to do here is maybe sail the boat at a slightly wider angle to the wind to keep the boat going fast and punching through these waves.
Okay, so Roberto Benamati, previous Star World Champ. He's hammering away upwind with Alberto Ambrosini, another class act who know this lake extremely well. And you can see them both working their boat upwind. And they're in the mix now in fourth spot. Negri and Clean have tacked over, weaving their way up now the right-hand side of the track. Kayard Lopez behind Scheid, Björning in third. It looks like Benamati Ambrosini in fourth, with Kuznirovic and Mello in that little fifth spot in the pocket behind that group. And then another group of Melaby, Revkin, Lenhart Kushner, Rohat Ponso and Doyle and Infeliz in that second group, all in the top 10. Diaz and Prada at the bottom of our screen on Virtual Eye. They're in the mix. Augie Diaz, Bruno Prada coming together for this regatta. Two fierce competitors. Bruno Prada, he is one of the best star crews in the world. In the Star Sailors League rankings, he's been at the top of the table for 140 weeks or so in the past. So we like to call him the Roger Federer of the star sailing, but he's far too humble to acknowledge anything like that. But we're back with the leaders. Paul Kayard, bow number 1 with Arthur Lopez, and bow number 9, Diego Negri, Fritjof Clean, the Italian-German duo.
This is really interesting little tactical switch here that we've seen. Diego Negri had tacked onto starboard to go back to the middle of the race course, which allowed Kayard to get to the right of him a little bit. But now Kayard has tacked and is going to be looking to split with Negri. I expect that Negri will not leave Kayard off the hook, and that Negri will tack really, really soon. Here he goes. So Diego Negri is just slamming the cover on to Paul Kayard and making sure that Kayard doesn't get a sniff of any clear air or any advantage to try and sneak through.
Well, Diego Negri, 48. He's from northwest Italy. He's ranked third on the SSL leaderboard rankings. He was second at the Worlds in Miami in 2016, second at the Worlds, two-time Olympian, 2 times European champ, and one of his 2 daughters, Ilaria and Virginia, will be watching this, both keen optimist sailors. And Frida Fritjof, the SSL sport director, he's SSL ranked second as crew, and he has usually been sailing with Robert Staniek. and they won the SSL finals in 2017, which was a great result for those guys. And Fritjof, or Frida, as everybody knows him, is this larger-than-life character who now runs the training center here in Riva del Garda, prepping people like Loic Peyron and the laser sailors and 470 sailors to head to these Star Championships, really opening the door to sailors from all disciplines, such as match racing and round-the-world sailing and single-handed boats and double-handed boats, using this Star as a platform to become a who's who of sailing, to aim at the end of the Grand Slams to the SSL finals in Nassau each year.
Yes, it's interesting. Once again, Diego Negri has decided not to tack as Paul Kerr tacked onto port tack to split cover from Negri, and Negri is looking super confident now in that he's happy to leave Paul Caird and his crew, Arthur Lopez, just set up to windward of him. Caird slightly to the right, and I think they're now in for the long haul on this leg into the windward mark. So it's a really interesting view of Negri in terms of his confidence, and he's happy to leave Caird slightly off the hook, knowing that he's got a solid lead and will lead into this windward mark.
Well, he's got over 60 metres or so over Caird and Lopez. Benamati, Ambrosini 100 metres behind them. Scheid, Björning still in touch, and then a little gap to Kuznierdovich and Melleby, the fiery Scandinavian with Josh Revkind from the USA. This duo that has come together so successfully in the Star to win the Worlds and to become both skipper and crew ranked #1. They're up there. Lennart and Kushner in 7th, Doyle in Feliz up into 8th, Rohart Ponceau in 9th, and Diaz and Prada in 10th. That is the top 10. Outside of the top 10, just looking at the left-hand side, we can just mention a few other names there. Hunkler and Hannekamp from Switzerland. Loof, Freddie Loof, the gold medalist from 2012. There he is from Sweden in 12th. Grund and Berzinski, German duo there in 13th. Grail and Truth from Brazil in 14th. So Lars Grail, respectable result. He's going to be pretty happy with that. And as we go down through the leaders, the top 25 on the rest of the fleet, quite a few club sailors, which is really nice to see. Angelini and Helsberg, Gallinaro and Weiser, and Helmsing and Schubach in that top 25 mix there. So back with race #1 leaders towards the top mark. This will be the final top mark rounding of race #1. They'll go around and then head straight down to the finish line. But I don't think anybody's going to catch these guys.
Unlikely, Digby, unlikely. I think that Negri and Clean, they sailed a really super run on the first downwind, and given that they've got a 56-metre lead right now on Caird, they probably would have to make a serious error for them to allow Caird through. It's especially true because it's more or less a single jibe down the run, so there are not that many tactile options to go and pass on the run. What's also interesting is that Benamati looks as if he has passed Robert Scheit, and that's probably because Benamati managed to get more to the right-hand side of the racecourse than Scheit on that upwind leg. And but my money would be on Scheit to pull through to third. A little bit early to say, but if Robert Scheit is close to Benamati at this windward mark, I would say that Scheit will blow him away downwind.
Well, Scheit and Björning have, to use a naval term, the weather gauge on Benamati and Ambrosini. They can sort of come down onto them. But a really decent battle for 3rd, 4th and 5th with Kuznierdovich and Mello, the Polish-Portuguese duo coming together for this regatta. Federico Mello was in the last Volvo Ocean Race on Turn the Tide on plastic, and now we see him on a Star. As we look at Paul Cayard sailing with Arthur Lopez from Brazil. Arthur, the crew at the front of the boat, 33 years old, from Sao Paulo. He's been sailing Stars for about 13 years, and in 2017 was the European champ, sailing with Torben Grail, Lars's brother. And as you mentioned, the Grails, a big family of sailor Martine Grail, the daughter of Torben, was in the previous Volvo Ocean Race, and of course won the gold medal in the 49er FX, which is mightily impressive.
Yeah, spectacularly successful sailing family, and sailing heroes in Brazil, along with Robert Scheidt. So yes, it would be interesting to see Martine in a Star actually sometime. I'm sure she's probably tried it, but yeah, she is campaigning again for Tokyo in 2020 next year, and very, very formidable competitor.
Yeah, already looking good, I think, winning the Worlds. And interestingly, for the Star Sailors League ranking, they are now opening up the rankings to other Olympic classes. They include now the 49er FX and the NACRA catamaran, the foiling cat, and so Martine is in there. She's on the ranking, having done so well in the Volvo Ocean Race and her 49er FX campaigns, that she's ranked in the top 20, and we're going to see that develop over the next few years. And it's fascinating that, you know, at first the Olympic classes will be opened up to that ranking, and then eventually as many classes as we possibly can get onto a real sort of world leaderboard, which will help some sailors get to be invited to the finals in Nassau, the Masters, where half the fleet qualifies, half the Star fleet, and then half are invitees and VIPs invited by the SSL.
Yeah, it shows how successful the Star Sailors League is in terms of the format, that so many other Olympic classes are looking to emulate it and join in the Star Sailors League format. So it really has taken off over the past number of years, and it's successful with the sailors and with the sponsors and with the media, and it's really been great.
And I think we can you know, ramp up the Super Sunday that is coming this Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, we're Wednesday now, we've got 4 days of these qualifiers. It'll all start to shake out on Friday, when it gets dicey as to who is going to make that top 10. And then Sunday, if they run their final qualifying race, will be quite tasty, you know, because who is going to survive or die? And then you go into the top 10 who go through the quarters, semis and finals, with 4 on the start line. And remember, there's prize money, you know, so you know, we've got the prize money, $100,000. We've got the European Championship, we've got the SSL Breeze Grand Slam, we've got points at stake to try and get yourself to that final. And it is a wonderful, wonderful event, a real who's who of sailing, all to play for. But as the boats head to that top mark, let's check in again with Shirley, and we're saying a lovely lead by Diego Negri and Fritjof Clean.
Digby, I think they're very confident, particularly in their upwind speed, and they've extended, you know, not by much, but you know, 10, 20 meters on this leg, and they look very relaxed, very happy, and very in control of the rest of the fleet. I mean, Paul Cayard's done well too. You know, he's 60 years old, Digby. He's an inspiration to all of us. So this is really tough physical conditions, and he's so far he's holding off Robert Scheidt just behind him, although Robert has closed the gap, and I think we'll see a real interesting battle on this long downwind to the finish.
Well, here is the bow number 1, Paul Cayard. Shirley, I think Paul is 60 on Sunday. I was just looking through my notes the other day, but we'll verify that. But in great physical shape, goes down the gym. When I was trying to connect with him during the Volvo race. You know, he's always down the gym, so keeping himself in good shape. Robert Scheid also in amazing shape, just getting around, poking his nose up into the breeze there, Prof, to slide around there.
Yeah.
A real battle now. Roberto Benamati duking it out with Matthias Kuznierovic, the two helmsmen, the Italians inside the Polish duo there. Round they go. Matthias Kuznierovic just giving it away to the Italians. So
4 gold stars together.
4 gold stars together, and these guys are going to be hammering downwind, duking it out. Ivan Melleby, Josh Revkind, the SSL ranked #1 helmsman and crew. There they go, this fabulous Norwegian and American duo. Back to you, Shirley.
It's amazing, isn't it? The gold stars making their way to the front. I mean, I'm just looking at the next one. Xavier Rohart, they'll be the next boat to round the top mark. It's tough sailing, you know, and all those guys are used to that. They've sailed these boats a lot. They've sailed here a lot, and their boat speed is really showing here. It's really coming to fruition.
Okay, so the French duo of Rohart and Ponceau just sliding inside the Argentinians, Fabian McGowan and Juan Pablo Pecosi. And behind them, Eric Doyle, Payson Infeliz from the USA. Bacardi Cup winners, which is another, it's called the Bay Grand Slam. And that's another SSL event which combines with a very traditional star event. And they are on form. Oh, look at that pinching around that mark, Prof.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you want to judge that ley line absolutely bang on to the millimetre, but if you just get it slightly wrong, then you've got to turn the boat up into the wind, go a little bit slower and a little bit higher, just like George Szabo is doing here.
That's Augie Diaz.
Augie Diaz, sorry.
Bow 11.
As you turn the boat into the wind and slow the boat down a bit, then potentially you hit a wave and you slow down.
And here are your countrymen, Peter and Robert O'Leary, bow 66 going round. That's a good position for them, followed by Freddie Loof and Brian Fatih, one of the best star crews in the world, with one of the best star helmsmen in the world. And just chasing them is Vasily Guriev and Andriy Shafranyuk from Ukraine in that mix there, followed by Renato Herrera and Paolo Cisbani, an Italian team in that top 15. Bow number 4, Lars Grail with Pedro Trusch, just sliding around that top mark for the final run downwind. And they're followed by Flemming Sorensen and Niels Trusso from Denmark. People from all over Europe competing here. There are 95 boats on the racetrack right now. I think they had 96, and I think one has had to drop out, but 95 boats for a European championship. Very impressive, and all on one start line. But now they've stretched out as they gun their way towards the finish.
As expected to be, Scheid has absolutely blown away Benamati going downwind and is in a very solid third position. And I think Kuznierovic is rounded 5th, but is also pressing Benamati as well. So Kuznierovic, of course, being a Finn Olympic gold medalist from Atlanta in '96, would be a very strong downwind sailor, and won the Star World himself in 2008. So generally the guys that have come from the single-handed boats are very, very good downwind, because they are very kinetic in terms of their body weight and very active in terms of the way they move the boat around downwind. So,
well, Jorgen Schöner, Jan Eli Gravad, Danes just squeezing around ahead of an Italian-Danish duo, Alessandro Angelini and Martin Helgeberg. That was a good, tight battle, and you know, the beauty of sailboat racing in these big fleets is no matter where you are, you're having a little battle with whoever's around you.
Always, yeah. I mean, you know, there will always be boats that are near you that you see at every mark, and if you get a bad start, you might end up at the windward mark in 40th position, and but there will be boats around you that you'll be battling with, and just because you round in the middle of the fleet, you know, you don't have the right to automatically sail past the boats that are around you, so you end up having these battles with the closest boats that are near you. So it applies all the way down the fleet, and for the club sailors who, you know, perhaps aren't used to racing in this standard of competition, it's a fantastic opportunity for them to sail against, you know, the heroes of our sport. And you know, sometimes the club sailors can, you know, put one away against the top pros.
Oh, and they will do. We're going to see that.
Absolutely. And generally speaking, in the lighter conditions, that would often be the case, where the same level of physical fitness and technique isn't required, and it requires a lot more subtlety in terms of the way you sail the boat. But here we have Paul Caird going downwind, Arthur Lopez just at the mast, shuffling forwards and backwards gently with regard to the waves. And as you can see, Paul there, tiller in the right hand, main sheet in the left hand, and just urging the boat down the waves and holding off Robert Scheidt and Henry Bonig.
Okay, so a little bit of separation now amongst that top 5. Finish line in sight, fairly relaxed looking Fritjof Clean, the crewman with Diego Negri in the lead. And Frida Fritjof, the big guy on the right, is now sitting down. They've got an 81-meter lead over second place Caird and Lopez, but clearly don't want to take their eye off the ball. But that's a great feeling to be leading a class fleet like this on race number 1. It's going to do their confidence no end of harm. And we'll hope that Shirley can, once they cross the line, go up and have a quick chat with both of them and get their thoughts. But so far so good for the Italian-German duo. Caird Lopez behind them in second, Scheidt, Björning third, Kuznerovic and Mello now up into fourth. So they've stolen a march on the Italians, or there's a real battle going on with the Italians.
Yeah, as expected, Kuznerovic, the former Finn sailor, very, very strong downwind. And I think he was just a few metres behind Benamati and Ambrosini at the windward mark, but he's taken him downwind. So I would expect Kuznerovic to finish fourth here. He has split a little bit from Robert Scheidt, so perhaps Kuznerovic is smelling an opportunity with Robert Scheidt. Kuznerovic looks as if he's got some nice pressure on the right-hand side as we look at the screen, and is soaking nice and low. But I would expect if Scheidt sees any danger threatening from behind, that he might even jibe over to cover. So for my money, I would say this is the order of the finish now, with Negri and Clean, followed by Caird and Lopez, Scheidt, Bonig, Kuznerovic and Milo. And Benamati has just drifted back a little bit, and we'll be looking over his right-hand shoulder at former world champion Xavier Rohart to make sure that he tries to hang on to that fifth place.
Well, Rohart and Ponso have climbed a couple of places from that mark rounding, the bottom gate rounding on lap number 1, and they've managed to pull themselves up from 8th up into 6th or 5th at the moment, but they're having a good battle with Lennart and Kushner in that little position there, so we'll see how that pans out. But here is the front 5, and Scheidt and Björning really are beginning to take some chunks out of the leaders.
Yes, it would be nice to see some VT.
Yeah, I think our virtual is just glitching slightly there. Never mind, but there's still 80 meters between the leaders here. Fritjof Clean standing by the mast. Diego Negri focusing on where they're going. Frida, he can look around the racetrack behind him. He'll be feeding all that information back to his helmsman. Fritjof Clean, an absolute class act. Super, super crew. But Scheidt and Björning over there. No, I beg your pardon, that's duo that are out, I think, of the competition.
Yeah.
I think they're just...
Conditions have softened here, Digby.
Yeah, so we should pull off these guys because I'm not sure perhaps they were over the line or had an issue because they're not up there in the running. They're just getting back towards the committee boat. So it's still Negri and Clean, Kead, Lopez, Scheidt, Björning, Kuznerovic, Mello, Benamati, Ambrosini, and Melaby and Revkin.
Yeah, you can see now that Diego Negri's crew has stood up on the boat and is hanging onto the mast, and that's generally a sign that the wind has dropped off a little bit. Frida up on the, standing on the foredeck, holding onto the mast and very, very gently helping the boat to rock down the waves. So sometimes the crew weight goes forward in the lighter stuff, and then when you get a puff, you come back in the heavier stuff. So I would say they're just looking at the boats behind now, making sure that they don't make any error coming down to the finish line, and making sure that they just keep it safe.
Well, Shirley, on the water, from our position at the club, we're not foreseeing any particular dramas, but perhaps you can tell us different from your perspective.
No dramas, Digby, but a good spot. The wind has softened. It's probably about, I don't know, 14 knots maybe now, and the sea state as well has gone down. So a lot flatter at the bottom of the course. We're right at the finish, just waiting for the boats to get here. But yeah, a lot calmer than it was, and but I got to tell you, Digby, it looks amazing. I mean, the lake is full of star sails, and at some point you look up and there's just, you know, nearly 100 boats spread right across the lake. You know, the majestic mountains on each side. It's quite something. It really is.
The snow-capped mountains as well just adds that little icing on the cake, as it were. So here's Paul Kead, Arthur Lopez behind the leaders in second spot. Paul Kead with his new boat, brand new boat that he christened a couple of days before race number one. He's going to be really happy with that.
I was chatting to him this morning, Digby, and I asked him how many starboats he has owned in the 40 years of starboat sailing, and he actually had lost count. So yeah, he splashed this boat a couple of days before the event, bottle of champagne over the bow, and it just shows how much of a relationship that he's had with the Star class over the years.
And still going mightily strong. Third position, Scheidt and Björning there, communicating perfectly. And Robert, you see him around the boat park, as determined as ever, one of the fiercest small boat competitors there has ever been. Remember, he had those amazing battles with Ben Ainsley in the Laser at Sydney, and beforehand, and a real class act, and you know, a proper sportsman, one of the kind of most outstanding sportsmen in sailing and sport, and one of the most successful Brazilian Olympians of all time. So here we go. The finish is in sight for the leaders, who are stretching ahead. It is still the Italian-German duo, Negri and Fritjof Clean. There we go, bow number 9 in the lead. They've got 40 meters or so from Kead and Lopez. Diego Negri looking consummately relaxed at the back of that boat, and Frida just talking him into the finish line as they slide downwind in the calmer conditions to take a victory on race number 1 of the first ever SSL Breeze Grand Slam, plus the Star European Championship of 2019. And you could see them just bump fists there, acknowledge the race committee, taking their jib down, and the jockey pole, the whisker pole. An amazing result for those two. Second across the finish line. Just coming into picture. Oh, quite close. Quite close. Whoa! That's amazing, Shirley. Do you know, I'm not sure who actually got that.
I don't know, we're going to have to wait for confirmation, but you know, you can, if Robert Scheid is behind you downwind, you can never rest. That was so close. Hopefully we'll hear from official sources soon.
Okay, well, Virtual Eye is saying that Kayard and Lopez got it, but we weren't expecting dramas, but then bang, Scheid just leaping downwind to the finish. We'll have a replay in a minute, and Matthias Kuznidovic going across the line ahead of Roberto Bonamati, Alberto Ambrosini there in fifth. So amazing result for the Polish skipper with the Portuguese crew. And then let's have a quick replay of that second place finish. Let's see if we can eyeball this between the two orange flags. Look like Kayard by a whisker.
Yep, super tight. And as I said, Robert Scheid is so strong downwind, and as Shirley pointed out, you just could not relax with a sailor like Robert Scheid behind you. So Kayard just sneaking second place.
Now, Shirley, you've managed to go up beside the winners, Diego Negri, Fritjof Clean. Over to you, Shirley.
Digby, I've done better than come alongside. I'm on board. I'm on board with the winners, the champions. I mean, fantastic race. I mean, from start to finish, you looked very comfortable.
Yeah, it was very good today because after so much training, we had the opportunity to check our speed. And as we were supposed, we made with the freed sails, main and jib, is a good balance. So very fast. We know the lake. We are always training here in the training center. And I was also sailing here with the Olympic team with the Star and the Laser. So we knew we had to bank the right side today, and it was a good call. So we were leading at the top mark and then just controlling the rest of the fleet. So it was very good. The lake is giving the best of its conditions, so good, very happy.
Well, Frida, I mean, you looked particularly comfortable, I think, on the upwind.
Yeah, I think our setup is very good. We have a good boat. We have great sails. I have a great skipper, so nothing can go wrong.
To me, conditions are changing a little bit now. It's got calmer. What are you expecting in the next race?
Yeah, the breeze is dropping a bit and went much to the left now, so it's not so sure. We have to see till the last moment before the start to make the call, because it's a lake, so more or less you have to go on one side and make your call before the start. So we have to see. See you soon. We will see soon.
It seems really physical today, really hard racing. You know, how athletic is it, Frida?
Actually, I mean, I think the upwind is right now the toughest because we have no free pumping. So for the crew, it's pretty easy on the downwind. And also we have to be aware, as there's no free pumping, that the jury is not going crazy. So it's not as the SSL finals, where you would be destroyed after a race like this. So it's more really feeling the boat, helming the boat and trimming it correct.
Well, great start by the Italian team. Let's see if they can follow up in race 2.
Well, thank you, Shirley. Great job. Straight onto the winning boat there, Prof. Fantastic.
Wonderful job, yeah.
I loved that finish between the American Kayard and Brazilian Scheid. That was absolutely amazing. And clearly Scheid, you know, an absolute powerhouse downwind, as we've been saying. And then, you know, he managed to steal 40 meters to almost cross ahead of Paul Kayard, who had it in the bag. I thought we were looking, saying, oh, there's not going to be no dramas, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's a photo finish.
It was interesting. Scheid did split from Kayard and went a little bit closer to the cliffs. Maybe he got a little bit more pressure, and obviously he's a super fast downwind sailor. So I would think there was probably a combination of possibly Scheid just being a little bit quicker through the water and also splitting tactically from Kayard, which nearly got Scheid through to second place. But super smooth Diego Negri and his crew, Fritjof Clean, and they really looked really comfortable, very confident out in the lead.
Well, they've been training together for this regatta, as well as Fritjof Clean training a lot of the club sailors and VIP guests for this regatta and for the other SSL regattas, as the big fleet continues to cross that finish line. We're in the back quarter of the fleet now, still heading downwind, and we know that our race officer, Giancarlo, as soon as the last boat crosses that line, he's going to reset and try and get race number 2 off as soon as possible. He's planning on 2 races today. That's his intention, and the whole racetrack is about 2 nautical miles from top to bottom. So the fleet's processing through the finish line, and we're seeing, you know, some of the middle markers here. Daniel Del Torre and Gerardo Del Torre from Argentina. And then there was Torvar Mirsky, the match racing world champ, just coming through the line, and he's racing with Ian Coleman. So it'd be interesting to catch up with Torvar Mirsky at the end of the day to see.
For sure. It's, you know, it'll be a new experience for him. It just shows that if, even though you're world match racing champion, getting into the Star is a different kettle of fish.
Well, let's jump back to the water with Shirley Robertson. I understand, Shirley, you're with Paul Cayard. Over to you.
Well, Digby, they're desperately keen to know if they managed to beat Robert over the line. Maybe you can clarify that for us in a moment. But what a start, Paul. Won the start, knew exactly where you wanted to go, and great boat speed.
Yeah, we had a great start and went the correct way. Diego was a little faster, upwind especially, and so, you know, he deserved to win the race, but I'm really happy just to be in the top 3. It's a good way to start the series.
It's a great way to start the series, but what a battle. That final run with Robert Scheid. I mean, he's renowned for his downwind speed. What was it like looking behind, seeing him coming?
Yeah, it's hard because, you know, he's very fast in downwind, so we try to cover him a little bit and go down and as fast as we can. So I think we did well.
We've been hearing in the commentary you have a big birthday, Paul, this week. Can you confirm that?
I'll confirm it on Sunday.
Good start to the regatta there. You must be pleased.
Yeah, I'm very happy. See if we can keep it going here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Shirley, out there. And it is his 60th on a Sunday.
I'm not sure that he wants us to remind him of that, but that's a fact for sure. But you know, it's a testament to Paul that you know, he does. He's such a ferocious competitor, and he keeps himself in such good physical shape that even in these strong winds, in a tough, heavy boat like the Star, that he can keep this level of performance up.
Well, I'm not surprised they were asking us as to who was ahead, them or Scheid. In fact, I've just sent a quick text to the committee boat because I'm not fully sure.
Looked to me as if he did.
I think he did by a whisker.
Yeah. I think Paul, to be fair, just caught a wave, and I think he just surfed and just got a half metre ahead of Scheid at the finish. That's what it looked like to me on the video.
Yeah.
But we will get that confirmation. But it looks to me as if KR took it.
Okay, so as the rest of the fleet come through the finish line, we could have a little replay of race number 1, Prof, and perhaps we can use your analysis, your analytical head.
Yeah, just coming out to
we'll see.
Yeah, the start here, really nice clean start. You can see the plethora of gold stars have started on the windward end of the line. There's Caird, majestic start out of the windward end of the line, and is looking to tack more or less immediately with Benamati to leeward, Elvin Melleby to leeward, Kushnerovich to leeward, and Robert Scheid. So all the top guys looking to start at the windward end of the line and hammer over to the right hand side. And here we have Caird again after tacking on to starboard on the ley line, but just following Diego Negri around the windward mark after that tough upwind leg in what looked like to be 17 or 18 knots of breeze.
Yep, boats pressed over, upwind there, and Caird in good spot in second. And away they go, the Italian-German duo.
Yeah, they've got a short leg, a reaching leg out to the offset mark, which is just used to split the upwind fleet from the downwind fleet, and then an immediate jibe as they go round this offset mark for the long downwind leg on port jibe. And there's Negri, fits off on his tippy toes, just delicately feeling the boat downwind, and the boat gently rocking to the left and to the right. And here's a shot of the top 5. Again, a little bit of a split from the top 3 back to 4th and 5th. That was the leg that we saw Robert Scheidt's amazing downwind speed, just passing Benamati and just going through to 3rd. And here's Diego and Frida going around, and main in fast, jib in slow, and that is the error from the French world champion twice, Xavier Rohart, and just made a little error.
Grind to a stop.
Absolute stop. You know, if you go upwind when the rig isn't back, you just stop. And if you go downwind with the rig back and not forward, you stop. So it's really critical to get those mass controls right. Here we are, Negri in 8.533, just covering Paul Caird and making sure that he doesn't split tacks with him, and looks after him.
Well, just tacking away now. You can see how hard he's got to work. Dear old Arthur Lopez with Paul Caird. Negri clean, just stretching away there to round that top mark with a massive lead at this stage. Yeah, look at that space.
Really nice tactical positioning from Negri, because he just judged the ley line absolutely perfectly, and everybody who was to windward of him had overlaid the windward mark and had dropped back. And you can see Negri and Frida now standing on the bow in the lighter wind coming down to the finish, and that just shows them adjusting their body weight relative to the wind speed.
So that is the leaders through the finish line, and a very nice job. And now here's the drama for second position. I've had the confirmation from the race committee boat that it was Caird ahead of Scheid. So Paul Caird was in second and Scheid was in third. So that's pretty cool to know directly from the
sigh of relief from Paul Caird and Arthur Lopez, because I suspect if that downwind had gone on for another 100 metres, I think Robert Scheidt would have nailed him.
Well, we are going to be looking at Robert Scheidt through this regatta and looking out for his stunning downwind performance, and perhaps analysing a little bit more about his technique and style. It's something that racers from any kind of boat can learn from, and perhaps we can ask him as well. We'll grab him and pick his brains on it.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, it's you know, downwind sailing has really developed over the last 20 years, Digby. It's moved on a lot, and the single-handed sailors are really expert in this, because single-handed boats tend to be lighter and they're more like surfboards. So downwind sailing, using the waves and jumping your body around the boat to help the boat surf down the waves is something that the single-handed sailors are particularly good at. And you know, fin sailors and laser sailors who've come to the star class bring that really, really elevated downwind technique with them, and it's moved the game of star sailing on a lot to being a much more active type of boat rather than a static type of boat downwind.
And interesting that Fritjof was saying that they're not flying the pumping flag, so you know, otherwise the physicality would be, you know, times 10.
Yeah. Rule 42, which is the rule that governs what you can and cannot do and what is an illegal action and a legal action downwind. And if they're not flying the flag, you can only pump, which is basically a sharp movement of the sail in and out for once per wave. And there are limitations in terms of what you can do with your body weight. So you've got to be very subtle, and you've got to be able to stay just the right side of the rule. But when they fly the flag to indicate unlimited pumping, that's when you can just go for it, almost like a windsurfer that you might see, where they are constantly pumping the sails in and out, and that's when your heart rate goes through the roof, and that's when your fitness really shows.
Yeah, that windsurfing, Olympic windsurfing class is completely mad. The wind flapping, waggling away. Now, do stay with us, because we have race 2 coming up shortly. I know our race officer is going to be turning around as soon as the last boat finishes and as soon as possible. But let's have a look at the provisional results. They're not the official race office results, they're just provisional results that we can go through with the time deltas. So indeed, Negri clean ahead of Kayard and Lopez, and 2 seconds, maybe it was under 1, it was about a millisecond really, with Scheid and Björning in third. That has been confirmed by the race committee, which is nice to know. Kuznirovic and Mello in fourth, Benamati and Ambrosini, who at one stage were up in fourth and looking good in third, now just beaten down to fifth. Meleby and Revkin, such a solid result from the ranked number ones in crew and helm on the SSL leaderboard. Rohard Ponceau managed to claw back from a slight error, which we caught on camera at that bottom gate in seventh. Lennart and Kushner in eighth. Doyle and Feliz in ninth. Diaz and Prada in 10th. Luf Fatih in 11th. Glunder Berzinski in 12th. Hunkler and Hannekamp from Switzerland in 13th. Grail and Truth there up in 14th. And Santoni with Sergio Lambertenghi from Torborle in 15th. And let's just scroll through the rest of the running order. Vasily Zogar there in 28th, an Olympian.
Yes, actually, you know, an enormously decorated sailor. As I said earlier in the program, one of the few sailors that has won Olympic medals in 2 different classes. He medaled in Athens in the laser and in Beijing in the laser, and then actually an 8-year gap, and he medaled in Rio in 2016 in the Finn. So I'm sure that he will look to improve his position in the next race.
Well, 36th, Szabo, George Szabo with Avalon. Szabo, brilliant at lake sailing. Then Hubert Merkel back with Marcus Coy after them. And there's 41st, Juan Kay, the designer.
Yes.
And he's he's such a well-known name. Yeah. He's kind of a bit of a rock star in the world of sailing, because he's designed winning round the world race boats and some kind of big sexy boats like Rambler, you know, that take line honours in the Sydney Hobart and things like that.
Yeah, hugely creative yacht designer. And you know, in the early 90s in the Admiral's Cup, which was a big international big boat event, you know, came up with some wacky designs which may not have been enormously successful, but were very, very innovative. And I guess his breakthrough boat was ABN AMRO in the 2000, 2005, 2006 Volvo Round the World race, where that boat won convincingly. And then he's gone on America's Cup work and you know, maxi and super yacht work as well. But it's interesting, you know, his reputation is in yacht design as opposed to sailing, but he has been sailing the Star for a long time because he just loves it. You know, it's a technical boat, and that probably appeals to somebody like him. And he's been sailing the Star for 10 or 15 years, you know.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it's nice to see him on the racetrack and being in the top half of the fleet.
Yeah, for top half, you'd be happy. You know, it's a kind of an expression that if you can be in the first page when you look at the results when you come on shore, as opposed to the second page, you'll definitely take that early on in the regatta.
Well, the race officers out there are resetting the track. We're building up towards the sequence of race number 2. But just before we get into that, let's have another look at that finish between Kayard and Scheid on the finish line, and just how close we've managed to make it as slow as possible. Scheid just...
I think if you just look, Kayard's boat starts rolling to windward, boom starts going up in the air, and then the boat will surf down this little wave, and his crew forward, and he just accelerates to cross the line. You know, they said 2 seconds. I think it was less than 1 second, Digby. But it was a photo finish for sure.
That was a photo finish, and Kayard didn't know, did he?
Well, I mean, Scheid was 45 meters behind him, and you know, that's a long distance behind for him to make up. So I think Scheid did a superb job of splitting with Kayard tactically, probably going a little bit quicker. And but it's interesting, even the psychology of it, when Shirley was talking to Paul, and asked Paul about, you know, shite being behind you, breathing down your shoulders, and Paul didn't even acknowledge, you know. So there's a little bit of like, you know, I'm the competitor, and you will give your competitors respect, but he didn't want to acknowledge it too much either.
Okay, Shirley out on the water. We noticed during race number 1 that the breeze has dropped off a little bit. So what can you tell us? Okay, we'll come back to Shirley in a second. I'm going to ask our guys at Virtual Eye to do a little bit of work and wind back the 4th leg to that run, and we'll try and have a little review of what Robert Scheid was doing to try and attack 2nd place there, Paul Kayard. No, we'll give him a minute or two to figure that out. We'll come back to that, and we'll just try and see if we can analyse, you know, the splits and separations. But I think we've got Shirley on the line. No, we don't. Beg your pardon. But we will do in a second. So building up to race number 2, a reminder of the format, which is that Wednesday today, we're into the first day of racing for the SSL Breeze Grand Slam. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all qualifying races, probably 2 per day, like today. And then on Sunday, the Super Sunday, we will have potentially the final qualifying race. And then they go straight into the quarterfinals, semi-finals and finals. And which is so dramatic and such a cool thing, innovated by the Star Sailors League, that really you are into 10 boats in that final quarters, semis and finals. And for simple maths, 3 get knocked out through those. So 3 will get knocked out of the quarterfinals, 3 will get knocked out of the semis, and then 4 will be battling it out on a much shorter course on Sunday. Well, Prof, we've seen one race, we've got a little bit of a feel, we've got a little bit of a flavour as to the runners and riders and some expertise out there. Let's put your feet to the fire slightly.
Too early to say.
It is way
too
hedging.
Way too early to say. But for me, what was interesting is the start, which is a critical pressure point in the race. We had a bunch of gold stars together at the winner end of the line. And then as we enter on the race course, we had a bunch of those gold stars sailing around together. So there would seem to be little doubt in my mind that the Olympic medalists and the stars of sailing are definitely going to be up there in the top of the fleet. I think we were talking about Kayard before the race. We were talking about Robert Scheid before the race, and indeed Diego Negri. And the winners are definitely going to come from that group and the broader group of boats that were directly behind them in that race. But it's too early to say. Conditions are changing now. It's getting lighter, and when it gets lighter, that can mix up the results a lot. So we will see.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. A sensible comment. I always go all out for somebody on day one, and
a little bit too early to say.
Never get anywhere near. I have to say, you're never going to bet against Robert Scheid.
Never.
You know, you see him on the water, you see his body language, you see his, how much he's moving around when he's going downwind. And we'll analyse that a little bit more on race number 2. But we'll come back in a moment. This club, Fraglia Vela Riva, is famous for being in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the most one-design boats on the racetrack. Something like 1,400 last year, optimists. We caught up with the race manager, Giuseppe Di Mattia, just to ask him a little bit about that and to compare and contrast with the Star event. Cool, like the movies. Giuseppe, you're holding a very special certificate there. Tell us, what is it?
This is the certificate for the Guinness World Record in 2012 that Fraglia had it for the largest single-handed regatta Actually is the Optic Easter Garda meeting. In 2012 we had 1,200 boats, but we already broke this record last year with 1,400 optimists.
1,400 optimists, all in this harbour launching at the same time.
Everywhere, actually everywhere. It's a regatta that we organize it since 37 years ago now. I've done it also as a sailor, so when I was a kid, and it's the most fun regatta I ever done in my life, because you don't even know where you are in the beginning, because you just look around, you see optimists everywhere. So it's a regatta that for a sailor, if you win the regatta, it means that you are really a good sailor, because you can position yourself in this huge mess, but you can look around and see, okay, I did it. That's really something impressive.
Compare and contrast, if you would, to the Star Sailors League Breeze Grand Slam.
The pressure is similar, because with the Star Sailor League Grand Slam, here in Riva del Garda we have a lot of pressure from the sponsor and then from all the people that are watching us worldwide, and we want to show that our sailing club is good to provide a good service in the water and also outside. We think we can manage it, because the Garda meeting is something that built us to manage this huge event.
Well, on behalf of SSL and the sailors, we thank you very much, because it's wonderful to be here. Cheers, mate.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, Giuseppe Di Mattia there, very proud of that achievement. And he's out there on the committee boat and he's texting us. We're on a WhatsApp with Giuseppe out there. We are very near sequence for race number 2, but we did ask our guys at Virtual Eye to run us through that final leg and see if we can say anything about the amazing charge from Scheidt and Björning, who were some 40 metres behind Kayard and Lopez.
Yeah, I mean, significantly behind Kayard and Lopez. So they go around the offset mark here. Kayard and Lopez jibe, Scheidt and Björning jibe. And then what will be interesting to see is what actually happens and where does Scheidt get the advantage. But you can see that Kayard is sailing relatively straight, but you can see that Scheidt now is starting to split and diverge from Kayard. Maybe he saw some more wind pressure on the high side, and you can see that Benamati and Krishnerovic were having a battle, and possibly Scheidt saw that they were gaining on him, and he decided to split from Kayard and sail the high road down to the gate. And at this point then I would say that Kayard was probably getting a little bit nervous, because Scheidt probably had the afterburners on, and you can see is starting to compress on Kayard and Lopez. And even though now they're probably parallel, I'm guessing that Robert and his crew, Henry, are really just absolutely going for it here, pumping on every single wave, moving their body weight forward and backwards, left and right, and they're now probably in a different breeze than Kayard and Lopez. And even now you would think, Kayard still has a lead, but Scheidt just got probably a massive wave or two and just drew level. So, it sometimes swings and roundabouts. You can get a gust of wind, your competition can get a gust of wind, and you have to try and position yourself in the best place to take advantage of those puffs coming down the course. But even now, Paul Kayard and his crew, Arthur Lopez, look reasonably comfortable. But I would say that Scheidt and Henry Björning just compressed just towards the finish, which is often when the pressure comes on. You can see the ley line coming up, and as you get down into the line. And the important thing here, if we could possibly stop it there, is that the windward, or the upper half of the line, actually was closer to the offset mark than the committee boat side of the line. And that's what Scheidt had spotted, is that the left-hand side of the line was closer, and he headed for the left-hand side of the line. And that requires a great skill and judgment to be able to look downwind and see, both ends of the line and try and make a judgment as to which end is closer. And it was just in the last 100 metres that Scheidt made that call and nearly nailed Kayard at the finish.
Cool stuff.
Yeah. It's tricky, you know, because, you know, the finish line is an imaginary line, the start line is an imaginary line, and like, well, you can see both ends. You know, it requires some skill in terms of your depth of perception to see which end of the line is the closer line to go to.
Okay, well, let's head back out onto the racetrack. We're in sequence for race number 2, I believe. Let's see if we can just patch into Shirley. You're around the committee boat, just standing off a little bit. Shirley, how long do we have to go?
Well, you've got all the tricky questions for me, Digby. I think slightly more than 5 minutes, but we'll,
Okay,
we'll
thanks.
wait till we get a signal.
I thought we were in
It is,
sequence. I beg your pardon, Shirley.
That's
Here
all
we go.
right.
We can hear it now.
Good, there
Boom.
it goes. It's just going up now. That's 5 minutes to the start of race 2. I mean, Digby, conditions here are still great. It's dropped a couple of knots, but it's still great breeze. I think what might be interesting at this start is, you know, everybody knows which way to go now, and it could be, we could see a lot of boats at that starboard end, and it could be a bit harder, I guess, also for some of the top guys to get a clean start. So I think there'll be a big fight at the committee boat to get out into the right-hand side of this racetrack.
Giuseppe is giving us some information from the race committee boat, saying that the direction is 200 degrees, which is a slight shift of around 5 degrees, I think, from race number 1. Top mark, the wind speed 14 to 15 knots.
Yes, and actually, you know, this start, it's possibly more likely to have our general recall than the previous start, because in strong winds, you've got bigger waves and they tend to blow the fleet backwards from the line. If the sea state is flattened out a little bit, you know, it's possible that the fleet could be more aggressively placed closer to the line at the start gun. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that, as Shirley said, everybody's going to know that the right-hand side of the course is the way to go, and that they're all going to be looking to start at the windward end.
Well, I think they moved the top mark ever so slightly to the right, so kind of nearer the cliff. So we're going to see a lot more tacking up that right-hand side. And we're seeing the majority of the boats just schmilling down at the committee boat end of the line. Everybody will be wanting to fight for the right-hand side. And we noticed on the last start that Paul Carr just timed it beautifully with space to tack off and conduct and execute an almost perfect start.
Yeah, and you know, the race officer, Giuseppe, would be a very experienced race official and sailor himself. And
Giancarlo.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
No, that's all right.
And he would, normally the start line is set at 90 degrees to the line. So in order to try and reduce the advantage of starting at the windward end of the line, he will place the pin end further to windward to make the advantage more to the port end of the line, possibly up to 15 degrees, and to try and even out that start line. So it is possible that you could start at the port end and try and tack and get across, but in our experience racing in Garda, you just have to start at the windward end of the line and get to the right as soon as you can.
Okay, well, we're seeing live shots. There's a committee boat. Standing up in the middle of the boat is Giancarlo Crevatin, the principal race officer. He does an awful lot of this around the world. You know, he's really, really experienced, and he was the race officer for that Optimist Regatta, the Guinness Book of World Optimist Regatta. He's been doing it for 5-6 years and totally loves it. And he also has a full-time job, actually. I think he's a tax accountant, which, you know, we could all use some advice on that front. But oh, what a lovely, lovely sight, Shirley, of the boats mass ranking for preparation for this start.
That's a great sight, isn't it? What a backdrop of that mountain. I mean, it's so stunning here. It's a real special treat for any sailor. They have not done what Prof said, and they're not spread along the line. They are really fighting hard at that right-hand side of the start line, and that's not easy to start at a starboard line like this, and knowing that you have to get to the right-hand side. It's hard.
So that, I think that was the 1 minute flag coming down.
Yep.
So they're within the 1 minute. Shirley, are you on the pin end right now?
We are, because we want to get signal all the way up the course. So we'll all be filming from the left-hand side, away from the mountains. Very difficult to see quite what's going on, but what I can see is there's going to be a lot of boats right on that line, and potentially even boats over.
Yeah, we can see, Shirley, we can see Krishnerovich right at the committee boat, and Benamati up there in the top few boats up close to the committee boat. So again, big fight for the windward end.
Well, coming up to 30 seconds, that is the start line between the two orange flags. Our camera boat in a perfect position for seeing it from the pin end. There's no one here. Masses of boats over.
Yeah.
Shirley, we are so going to have a general recall. It's untrue. Well, there are the live shots. We can not had a confirmation. I didn't. We're not hearing the signal because our camera boat is so far from the committee boat. But anyway, let's just see what we can see.
Yeah, there are boats turning backwards, Digby. So if the timing on the screen was correctly synced with the race committee boat, well then that for sure is a general recall. But we will get confirmation if we see the first substitute flag flying on the committee boat, and that'll indicate a recall. Hard to know at this point if that is the case, but there are a few boats turning back. So we will see.
Okay, well, the rest of the fleet I'm assuming that that was a general recall without actually being able to hear anything from the committee boat. But these guys will take a few minutes to just test it out. And
generally, if you have a recall, you know, what you want to do is still line up against your competition and sail on for a minute or two just to check your settings, check the your boat speed and your wind angles against your competitors before you turn back for the recall. So we just need to have that information to see what the story is.
Well, I think it's 3 boats being recalled. So I think we're in a race here.
No, it's a U flag start, Digby, and they've called 3 bow numbers 77, 58 and 9, and that means that those guys...
Well, that's Diego Negri and Fritjof Clean.
Wow.
Bow 9.
That is big news, Digby. That is big news. That means that Diego is disqualified. So they've broken the start early, and that'll be a tough thing now for Diego after his spectacular performance in race 1.
Okay, Augie Diaz, Bruno Prada, bow 11. They are working their way up in clean air with Manu Hens and Joost Hulweling from Belgium. Bow 47, off to a great start there in the middle of the pack. Merkelbach and Coy tacking on to starboard, just working their way into the middle, getting off into a bit of clean air.
Actually, interestingly, if our information is correct here, bow number 58 is Tom Lofstedt and Olympic medalist Anders Ekstrom. They will have been disqualified from that race for breaking the start line too early as well. So big news there that Diego and his crew, Fritzoff, have been disqualified from that race, if our information is correct.
Okay, and the virtual is giving us the lead line to Augie Diaz and Bruno Prada. They finished race number 1 around 10, but here's Diego Negri to the right of screen with Fritjof Clean. Their day is done.
Their day is done, yeah, early shower. Yeah, they will be kicking themselves, you know. It's early in the regatta where you just have to be a little bit more conservative in your tactics and to swallow a U flag disqualification at this early stage, yeah, they'll be kicking themselves deeply. That's a tough one for them.
Well, after 4 races, they will be able to discard their worst result.
Yeah, I mean it's not the end of the world, but you know you certainly don't want to be using up your discard early in the series, and especially if you know that you're going fast, you're confident, you're strong. You don't need to push it so hard on the start line, and maybe they just got a little bit over eager and perhaps even got their timing wrong. It could have been any one of a number of things, but you know it's certainly something that you want to try and avoid if at all possible. Potentially later on in a championship when you need to be a little bit more aggressive in your tactics. If you're trying to shoot for a particular position, then you might want to push the line a little harder. But generally speaking, if you're in a good position in the event, like Diego was, pushing it too hard in the next race is not the thing to do. So yeah, tough, long, lonely sail home. We've all done it.
We've all done it. And Shirley, on the water, as an Olympian yourself, an Olympic medalist, you know, some say that if you don't get the odd black flag and U flag and over the start, you're not trying hard enough. Perhaps it indicates how much these guys really want to do well.
I mean, we didn't really see Negri start, but you know, big mistake, I think, by someone with a vast amount of experience. It was shaping up to be really difficult and a high-risk starting situation. And I guess, you know, he should have known better. You know, this event is all about getting into the top 10 on Sunday. That is what is important. And to do that, you've got to be consistent. And, you know, he has all the boat speed. We heard him talk in the interview. You know, really confident in his boat speed and his tactics. You know, they are they're one of the boats to beat, and to make a mistake like that, both of them will properly be kicking themselves. Big mistake there. It was difficult. I wondered also about the race officer, as Prof said. Maybe you should have moved the pin end, you know, a bit higher up, made it a bit more even, spread the fleet out. But it was a high-risk start and very difficult. Diggers, we're on the left-hand side of the course. We're getting a great view of the boat sailing in under the cliff, and they just seem to get lifted, and they just seem to accelerate when they get there. And it'd be interesting, maybe as the days goes on, just to examine why exactly, you know, that happens. But getting a great view from the left-hand side of the course, looking over at the cliffs.
Thanks, Shirley. We're looking at bow 58. Tom Lofsted, Anders Ekström, and Prof. These guys don't know that they're out.
Yeah, and yeah, they don't know that they're disqualified. Now, what sometimes race management teams do is that at the windward mark, they will hold up a blackboard with the bow numbers of the boats that have been disqualified, so that it just saves them the effort and the heartache of sailing around the racecourse for an hour and then finding out afterwards that they've been disqualified. So for their sake, it's a nice thing to do from a race management point of view to at least let competitors know if they've been disqualified. And the other thing it does is that it helps the rest of the fleet, because you don't have somebody in the fleet who really shouldn't be there anymore competing in the race. So yeah, it's once again, I think what the interesting thing from this race shaping up initially is that once again Caird and Lopez are smashing the right hand side of the course, and so they must have snuck out alive in the wind end.
Well, as Shirley says, a magnificent sight looking across the course to the cliffs where the majority of the fleet are heading. And here's the leaderboard showing Caird and Lopez in the lead. Extraordinary performance from that duo. Kuznedovic in the mix, Benamati, Ambrosini also in the mix. Some good results there by these guys, Westphal and Karger, who we were seeing in live vision just earlier. They're up in fourth, Scheidt, Björning in fifth, Delen and Nogan from Sweden in sixth, seventh, hammering away, duking it out with Lennart and Kushner. And Doyle Infeliz in 10th, 11th. And who else? Diaz Prada up there, Freddie Loof in 15th. And he's sailing with Brian Petit from the USA. And Rohat Ponso looking to be in about 20th. So there is the first leg shaping up into a real battle as they converge in towards that cliff.
Yeah, I mean it's same again strategy for this race. Digby, right hand side is favoured. You've got some of the key players heading right: Gold Stars, Kayard, and Robert Scheidt. And interestingly, Benamati is up there as well. And you know, it's been a while since he's won a Star World Championships, so perhaps you know he has put in an extra effort for this event, which is on his doorstep. And so you know, maybe there's some early form in this event being shown by Benamati.
Okay, we're looking from the top of the racetrack now back down towards Freddie Loof and Brian Petit on bow number 7. And they're chatting away and talking to each other. Brian Petit in the day glow green hat. And he's just referring to Freddie, the gold medalist, looking up the track, and good duo there. Two absolute consummate sailors.
Yeah, Freddie's style is always to sit very upright in the boat. I'm not sure is that something that he carried over from the fin, but generally you can see his body position is quite upright, and a lot of the other hounds would be sitting a lot lower and more in a goop height position. But I would fully expect Freddie, after probably for him would have been a little bit of a disappointing result in the first race for him, to be trying to push through into that top 10 in this race. He's currently 12th, and obviously the boats to the right of him will have the advantage. So again, he's going to have some work to do to try and get through into the top 10. But Robert Scheidt, Kushnervich and Kayard, certainly they're fighting it out for the top 3 in the early parts of this race. So it'll be once again really interesting to see what happens when the first boats tack onto port and see him cross the head.
Well, Ant Razmilovic and Brian Hammersley from the UK, they were up there in that little mix as well. We're looking at the Belgians, Manu Hens and Just Willing on leg number 1. We're in day number 1, race number 2 of the Star Sailors League Breeze Grand Slam, which is combined with the Star European Championships. And the bow 7 there, left the screen. Freddie Loof just tacking away, getting under the Belgian team, over towards the cliff. Ivan Melleby, Josh Reffin. Oh, somebody's
serious smash between two boats here.
Ouch.
That looks to me as if that was a port and starboard incident. It's bow number 31, which is Guglielmo Danilon from Italy, and I'm not quite sure who the Swedish boat is. 8517. If we could get a bow number on them, that would be useful. But yeah, port and starboard incident there. Looks like the Swedish boat was dipping the starboard tack boat. Swedish boat may have come upright as he eased the mainsail, and the starboard tack boat heeled over.
It's Tom Lofsted and Anders Ekstrom.
Olympic medalist Anders Ekstrom in the Swedish boat 8517. So tough finish to both their days, and the rigs are locked together now, and if they're not careful, the second rig is going to come down. You can see the Italian rig is snapped at the spreaders, and yes, an early and unfortunate end to their day.
Well, that's a double whammy actually for Tom and Anders, having been UFD'd over the line on the start, so they were disqualified, and now they're in all sorts of pain, drifting back towards the start line. And an expensive day for them.
A very, very expensive day, Diggy. Yeah, that's that's really tough, you know, because obviously they were disqualified, so they didn't know, and they sailed on. And I guess if they'd known, they would have gone home, and that wouldn't have happened. But that's sailing for you. You know, you can't you can't communicate that they're disqualified until they get to the windward mark. And you know, it looked to me as if the Italians were in the right, looking at the positions of the boats. But yeah, tough day for them. Tough day for both teams.
Well, it is the Breeze Grand Slam, and we're getting an idea of that breeze with a few whitecaps rolling down. The windsurfing club on the other side of the lake looking good, they're all ready to go. And at the moment it's Mateus Kuznierovic with Federico Melo from Portugal, Mateus from Poland in the lead, poking ahead of Kayard Lopez, Westphal, Perga, Doyle, Infeliz, Hamper and Stepka, and Luf and Fatih in that little mix there. Mateus Kuznierovic, he is SSL ranked number 8, and he's been to all 6 of the SSL finals, normally with Dominik Zitsky, his compadre, and in 2014 they came 3rd, 2013 they came 2nd. They're always up there, and what an amazing sailor. 2-time Olympic medalist in the Finn, gold in '96, bronze in 2004, as well as being a star world champ in Miami.
Yeah, Mateus, an outstanding sailor, and you know, a hero figure to many young sailors in his native Poland too. And he has had a fantastic first leg to this race too. Looks to be going really, really quick actually. And looking at the tracker here now, this is interesting because Kayard and Lopez look to have dropped back, and the right-hand corner may not have paid. And it looks like we've got former world champion and current Bacardi Cup holder Eric Doyle with Peyton Infeliz and Freddie Loof and Brian Fatty have come through. So possibly there was a wind shift to the left towards the kind of halfway mark that has pulled some of the boats that weren't in the right-hand corner through. It's either that or Kayard had a problem, because certainly 5 minutes ago I would have put my money on Kayard being second and Kuznierovic first, but Kayard has dropped back out of sight from what we can see right now. So I would say that Kuznierovic has an early grip on this race, and you can see him coming out of the right-hand corner, left-hand side of the screen, boat just ripping along there through the chop.
Shirley, you're looking, again, you're looking right across the lake. You're on the left-hand side, and the boat's bouncing off the right-hand side, off the cliffs. What can you tell us, Shirley?
It's a little bit lighter than it was, Digby. It's about 14 knots, but it's a really long leg. I mean, they still have probably 3/4 of a mile to go. So a really long leg, and I guess what we're seeing, as Prof just said, is some of the boats just, I don't know, finding their groove. You know, they're getting used to the conditions on the lake, they're getting the right settings, and they just have a little edge, a little boat speed edge. And as you can see on the tracker, we're just seeing a few boats extending all the time. Just watching the lead boat tacking back in. Whatever they get off of those cliffs, I think it's a bit of angle and a bit of pressure. They really like it, and they've gone back in for more.
Okay, so we're hearing that it's still around 14 knots at that top mark. So they're in 14 to 15 knots of breeze.
Shade, Digby, if we look carefully here, you can see Robert Scheidt on the right-hand boat, slightly smaller mast, slightly further away. I wouldn't be surprised if Scheidt is going to come through and cross Kuznierovic if Kuznierovic stays on in this tack. The thing to do for Kuznierovic now is whether he tacks or whether he dips, and interestingly he is dipping behind Scheidt, so he is looking to sail into the right hand side, and Scheidt, the very clever sailor that he is, has tacked to cover. So Robert Scheidt, 5-time Olympic medalist, and is covering Mateusz Kuznierowicz, double Olympic medalist, into the right-hand side. So a real battle between these two giants of small boat racing.
Well, again, evidence of Robert Scheidt just determined to come out on top here. And remember, if you can win the qualifying rounds, you get a bye straight into the final, into the top 4. So you know you're going to be in the mix there. So Robert Scheidt there controlling the Polish-Portuguese duo of Kuznierowicz and Melo. And again, fabulously, Kayard and Lopez up there in podium position in 3rd.
Yeah. So I think Kerr just disappeared from our tracker, but is obviously in the mix there in 3rd. Yeah, there he is. So Kuznierowicz has just tacked onto starboard tack and is coming out of the right-hand corner. And interesting now, I would say that Scheidt might just tack before him and try and lead him back into the middle. So it'll be interesting to see where Scheidt positions himself relative to Kuznierowicz.
Well, he's going to stick himself between the mark and the boat behind, you know, it's kind of classic.
And he has done so, and that means that he can just put Kuznierowicz in the vice a little bit. What the danger is now for Robert Scheidt and Mateusz Kuznierowicz is that they may have overlaid the mark, and that means that Caird and Lopez might be able to claw some of that distance back. So it's a little bit nervy times now for Scheidt and Kuznierowicz, because they may just have gone too far. We will see as they get closer into that corner.
That's good call there, Prof, because that's what Virtual Eye is showing us with the theoretical ley lines. But let's see how it pans out to that top mark. So Shirley, at the moment, Robert Scheidt controlling Kuznierowicz behind, but a lot of the boats inside them could well drag their way ahead with shorter distance to sail.
It's a long way on one tack, all the way out from the cliffs to the mark. I also think there's a little bit of wind-blowing current. So I'm not sure if Virtual Eye takes that into account.
No.
But whenever we've been at the marks, you could definitely see something, you know, coming with the wind. So I'm sure Robert Scheidt is all over it. I wouldn't be surprised if he's nailed that ley line. But I guess we'll see in about 6 minutes' time when they get there.
Thanks, Shirley. Well, virtually, there it is. 3 boats on the lead line. Scheidt, Björning, Kayard, Lopez, and I think it was Doyle in Feliz, all kind of neck and neck on the Virtual Eye view. And Prof, theoretically, Kayard and Lopez just taking the lead for a second.
It all depends, as Shirley says, where exactly the ley line is. You know, it's a nice position for Kerr to be in, to leeward and slightly ahead. But if Scheidt has nailed the ley line, well, then it kind of doesn't matter. If Scheidt is slightly overlaid, well, then it hands a little bit of distance back to Kerr as he squeezes up to the mark. It purely depends now on the positioning of the boats and what the wind does in the next 5 minutes. If the wind goes left a little bit, then some more distance will be leaked towards Caird by Scheidt, and if the breeze stays steady or goes right a little bit, maybe that might just hold Scheidt in the lead. But looking at the video, Scheidt looks strong, but as I say, we don't know until we get to the mark. But it's really, really close. Don't forget Eric Doyle, this year's Bacardi Cup champion, and his crew Peyton Feliz are in a very strong slot as well. So it will be between Doyle, Caird, Scheidt and Kuznierowicz at this windward mark for sure.
Okay, that is the battle at the top of race number 2 on leg 1 of our 5-day championship. The Star Europeans and the Star SSL Breeze Grand Slam. And we saw Kayard in a marvellous position on race number 1 in second. He just managed to stay ahead of Robert Scheid. So again, these two within hailing distance of each other, 5 meters of distance between them from front to back. But let's see if Robert can just stay ahead on this drag race.
Yeah,
to that
it
top.
really is a drag race, and you know, as I say, I think it's really hard to say and to put my money on it, but I think that Doyle and Kayard might just sneak in around the top mark ahead of Scheid. I think Scheid possibly overlaid it a little bit because he had that battle going on with Kushnerevich. So we will see what happens.
And look at Diaz and Prada there in the middle, and look at the angle they're sailing. They're coming so high up compared to Doyle and Infeliz.
Yeah, the boats now on the left have overlaid the mark. Their mainsails are eased, their jibs are out, and it's going to be Eric Doyle and his crew Peyton Feliz who lead her on this top mark. So a little bit of a mistake from Scheid and Kushnerevich overlaying the mark, and Doyle and Feliz have a pretty handy lead of 3 or 4 lengths. So, but you know, ominously Paul Kayard in second. You know, just locking in his form here after the first race. So, and Robert Scheid in third. And as we said before, Diggers, Robert Scheid 3 boat lengths behind you, going around the windward mark onto a downwind leg. You know, in my mind, Robert Scheid could almost be joined first there because he's so fast.
Croatian team just coming around behind Scheid, Marin Mizura, Tonko Barac. And there's 94, Alexei Zhivatovsky and Lev Schneer from Russia, having a blinder of a second race. Freddie Loof, Brian Fatih rounding that mark just ahead of Manu Hens and Just Hululing. Forgive my pronunciation. And then Ant Razmilovic, Brian Hammersley round and coming through. So we're on the first lap of the track. They're going to be doing 2 laps, up, down to finish. And we're not expecting a third race today. Race officer very clear. He's going to run 2 races today. I'm not surprised because it was so cold earlier today. I imagine they're all warming up, which is fine. Now a bit of traffic around there. Zebo and Guy Avalon just leading Alessandro Angelini and Martin Helgeberg from Denmark. And they're ahead of David Leardini and Sebastian Marzarol in that big bunch up. Coming up to the mark, Ivan Melleby, bow number 10. He's just outside Frank Berg and Peter Ørsted from Denmark. I think he's going to get them around that mark, yeah. So a bit more bunched up around that top mark. Are you still up there, Shirley?
Yeah, you're on us. We're right at the top mark. I mean, it's fun and games in the middle of the fleet, isn't it? I mean, you know, everyone's having a great race. It's fab conditions. Interestingly, with a little bit less pressure, the boats closer together, and I think some of the real stars of the Starfleet, you know, they didn't manage to kind of stretch. A fab battle at the front. Also, obviously, no pumping flag as well, and a little bit less wind, so less kinetic, perhaps. And you know, Robert may not have it all his own way on this first downwind leg.
And Shirley, if I may ask, it was super cold earlier. Is it warming up at all?
Well, it's all relative, Digby, but it is slightly warm. I mean, remember, you know, you can see on the mountains. It's cold. The water is cold and the air is cold. Yeah, we have a slight temperature, but still can't quite feel my toes.
Okay, Shirley Robertson on the water, and we rejoin the battle at the head of the fleet. Doyle Infeliz now in the lead.
Yeah, Eric Doyle and his crew, Peyton Felice, went around the top mark in the lead, and Caird second and Shite in third. That looks to be what the running order is right now in this first third of the downwind leg. Again, Shite splitting a little bit from the first two. I expect that he's just moving the boat around a little bit more in the waves than the two star stalwarts in front of him, so we will see if he manages to close. But as Shirley says, there's no pumping allowed. The breeze looks a lot lighter now. I'm looking at Doyle and Felice there, it's really softened out a lot. It's interesting, you see the mast on the star here in the screen leaning forward, so there's an enormous difference in terms of the angle of the mast when you're going downwind compared to when you're going upwind, and that mast leaning forward really helps hugely with your downwind performance. But yes, Shite pushing hard against Caird, and these three boats just may compress together now as we get down towards the leeward gate, so pretty tight.
I think fourth and fifth compressing and having their own little battle together. That's a good one between Madsen and Jensen, with Kuznerovic and Mello. There's a lot in this game on leg number 2. Our first lap around the track as they go towards the bottom gate. Looks like Kuznerovic beginning to take bites out of Madsen and Jensen. Westphal and Kurger just behind them, with Loof and Fatih. Freddie Loof, Brian Fatih in a solid 7th spot.
Yeah, that'll be Freddie and Brian will be pleased with that. They were looking at about 12th spot, going halfway up that upwind leg, so for them to pull through to about 7th will be really, really good. You know, you would expect Kuznerovic and Federico Melo to pull through past Madsen and Jensen at some point, but also at the top of the fleet, I think Shite is pushing hard against Paul Caird.
Oh, that's a good battle.
Yeah,
that is a good battle. Paul Caird, he's going, oh, it's not him again.
Yeah. You know, you can just see it's much more delicate sailing now. Looking at this on the screen, boats are moving much more slowly, and it requires a slightly different skill set to sail in this lighter stuff than it did when it was a little bit more breezy. The crew standing up at the mast now, helping the rocking motion of the boat and keeping their weight well forward. And yes, it'll be it's getting a little bit fluffier and lighter as we get down this course.
Well, okay, I think Kuznerovic has taken indeed Mello and Madsen and Jensen. Looking at Eric Doyle, Payson, Infeliz, the leaders of race number 2, some 30 metres ahead of Caird, but there's around 10 between Caird Lopez and Shite and Björning.
It's interesting, Digby, as the breeze lightens off, I think I would fancy Eric Doyle and Peyton Infeliz for that to suit them a little better. Eric is a master of Miami sailing, as is evidenced by his Bacardi Cup victory in March, and it tends to be light moderate conditions, so I think Doyle and Feliz will be pretty strong if this breeze continues to ease off. But even look at Shite there now on the left hand side of the screen. Look at the amount of movement that the boom is going through up and down, and he's closed a lot. He must be only a length behind Caird now.
Well, it's great to compare the body language between Shite and Caird in that one shot, and how much more movement Robert Shite seemed to be putting into it in the live shot.
Yeah, it's that single-handed pedigree again, that, you know, single-handed sailors just move around a lot.
Okay, so that is the top 3, and then battle for 4th and 5th. Madsen, Jensen, Kuznerovic, Mello. I think Caird is managing to hold off Shite and Björning at the moment, but from our view, from quite some way away, I have to say, looking right across the course, which does compress the angle a little bit. It is looking like the American is holding off the Brazilian, the two skippers. Henry Björning with the standing up on bow number 3, looking behind, feeding the information to Robert. Robert can see Paul Kayard dead ahead in his sights, and he'll be focused on trying to overtake these guys and possibly put a wind shadow on the boat ahead, the wind coming from behind them, and be using a little bit of match racing tactics.
I think DB Kayard's been smart here, though. He's staying to the left of Robert Scheidt, because the left-hand mark at the bottom of the racecourse is the mark you must go around. If you go around the right-hand mark, you're on the left-hand side of the course looking upwind, and that's not the place to be. So whatever Kayard is doing, he's just protecting the left-hand side and making sure that Scheidt doesn't get to the left of him. So it's pretty smart by Kayard. Even if Scheidt is going a little quicker, he's just trying to protect the left.
Well, brightening up on Lake Garda after a very cold morning. We do have the southerly breeze, but it's not classic Lake Garda wind machine conditions. We're feeling cold mountain air coming up the lake towards the top there. Okay.
Yeah, Kayard's. Yeah, it's very smart sailing from Kayard. He's eased away a little bit from Scheidt now again, and just to repeat again what Shirley said, as the breeze gets lighter, Scheidt's downwind advantage will be less. So some nice smooth sailing from Kayard here. And the wily old dog.
Now it looks like Kayard is in a position to attack Doyle and Infeliz. There's 6 meters, 5 meters between them. So there's a gulf left in the hole there.
Yeah, it's going to be tight here at the bottom, but you know, Eric Doyle and his crew are protecting the left from Kayard and his crew, as are protecting the left from Scheidt and his crew. So it's all about just staying on the high side and not letting anybody inside you, so that you can round that left-hand mark and protect the right-hand side of the next upwind leg. So it's pretty steady state stuff here, unless one of them makes an error. But it's really getting lighter now on the race course. So when it gets light, it does bring opportunity, because there can be variations in wind strength across the course, which are a lot more pronounced than when it's windy. But it just softened a little bit.
Let's jump out to Shirley on the race course for your observations, Shirley. Okay, we'll come back in a sec. They possibly having to reposition themselves and get round to the front. But still, Doyle Infeliz holding off Kayard Lopez. Scheidt Björning in third, Kuznidovic pulling away from Madsen and Jensen, and then quite a space to Loof and Fatigue. Well, jibing away, Kayard and Lopez taking a different track there.
Yeah, that is interesting. Why they would have done that? You would have thought that protecting the left was the way to go. Maybe Kayard spotted some more breeze. I'm interested to see what Scheidt has done here. The digital display shows him on the same jibe, and you would think that Scheidt would be jibing directly on top of Kayard's breeze, but maybe Scheidt is looking to get to the left of him. Yeah, I mean, I think Doyle sailed very smartly and has just jibed pretty close to the ley line, to the gate, and will just be trying to keep his air clear, to be honest with you. His crew, Peyton Feliz, will be looking backwards, looking up at the wind indicator at the top of the rig, to making sure that their air is clear. So Shite splitting now and just getting to the left of Caird. If Caird lays down on one, then Shite is sailing extra distance. If Caird doesn't lay, well then Shite potentially is starting to get a little bit back. So we will see.
Okay, well, there was our virtual picture, which shows them neck and neck. And here we're seeing Paul Caird bow number one with Doyle and I think it's Payson.
Payson?
Payson, yeah.
Okay. Payson in Felice, that's correct.
Yeah. Those three. Oh, it's smoothing out. That was forecast.
Yeah, no, the breeze was due to soften all day today, so this is exactly as per forecast. So, Caird now will be just trying to sneak down over the bow of Eric Doyle. He'll be just trying to roll every little wave down to just put Eric Doyle and Payson under pressure, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when they roll out here at the gate. At the moment, it looks like they're above ley line to the left-hand buoy, and that will be good for Eric Doyle, and that will mean that there'll be another jibe in it for them when they reach the gate.
Well, no guesses for which gate they're aiming for.
Oh, it'll be left-hand gate for sure. Left gate, left turn, and into the cliffs again. So that's where they have to go. And from a race management point of view, again, it would be interesting to see whether they decide to position the left-hand mark as you look upwind, further upwind than the right-hand mark, to try and level out the massive advantage that the right-hand mark as you look upwind has. Generally, race management try to do that so that you can avoid the crush of boats all trying to get around the one mark at one time. So it'll be interesting to see if Giancarlo manages to do that for this gate. But Caird there rocking pretty aggressively. Doyle is in a bit of a tough spot, to be honest, because there's a lot of wind shadow from him behind, and it's a tricky spot for him. Caird is trying to roll around his bow, and I think Caird is going into the lead here, Digby. I think we've got a leader change. So if Caird can just manage to get around his bow, he's jibing. Here we go. Pull back. And he's preparing for the bottom mark. So he's taking the pole off. And is Caird going to jibe? Yes, he is. Boom across, rig back, and Caird is in the lead. We've had a lead change. So Paul Caird, 1988 Star World Champion, Louis Vuitton winner in 1992, has gone around in the lead, and a mistake by Eric Doyle and Payson Feliz. Big mistake, and Robert Shite has pounced. So it is now Caird and Arthur Lopez and Robert Shite and Henry Bonig in 1-2. So Eric Doyle just made an error with getting the main sheet in. The main sheet would have jumped out of the cleat and didn't manage to finish off that gate manoeuvre to his liking.
You were nearest those boats for that overtake. Is there any insight you could give us about that fantastic overtake there?
Well, as Prof said, that's it's a massive manoeuvre at the bottom mark in a start. So it's a great big main with a lot of mainsail, and you've got to get the rig back and the jib on, and it's a lot going on. And actually, Doyle, he didn't approach that very well at all, and actually he would have been in the bad air of Caird anyway. And then I think in a bit of a fluster and didn't get the main in the cleat properly. So massive loss. I mean, I'm just watching him now. He's sort of below everybody, and yeah, really big mistake right at the wrong time. And Caird did so well on that run, kept his cool. It was very static. I mean, quite like winds, without the ability to pump. It's just about keeping your air clear and keeping it really smooth, and he did that, and pretty impressive in that leg.
Well, the rest of the fleet coming through. We saw Rohart, Ponceau in there, Ugi Diaz, bow 11 coming around now with Bruno Prada. The race committee just altering the position of the top mark. Prof, just moving it around, I guess, with the hoots.
Yeah, generally speaking, when you go around a mark and there will be a rib making a repeated sound signal with the foghorns, it's generally indicating that they've changed the position of the next mark. So generally, the sound signals will attract your attention, and then you look down to the race official boat, and if they've got a red flag, it means that the mark has moved to the left, and if they've got a green flag, it's moved to the right. I didn't see, and I'm not great at my red and greens anyway, so perhaps if we get a little bit of VT on the race official boat, we'll know whether they've moved the mark to the left or to the right.
And Fillet doing looks like they're doing a little penalty turn, small infringement. I did see Torvar Mursky in the mix there, which was pretty cool to see the match racer in the top 20 out there. But all the leaders heading to the right-hand side of the racetrack. Paul Cayard and Arthur Lopez from Brazil, the American with the young Brazilian. So now I'm being told that there was a collision at the top of mark, Prof, so let's have a look at it.
Yeah, that'd be great if you can see that.
What happened? That's about 10 Ivan Melaby piling through in traffic.
Oh,
boom.
Yeah.
Just tapping
Yeah.
guys behind him.
Yeah, that'll. So Elvind was inside him at the mark. It'll all depend on whether he had the inside overlap established when the bow of the other boat entered the 3 boat length circle. Hard to know, but a glancing blow, no damage caused. So I'm sure a round of drinks after the race will sort that out.
A gentlemanly word, perhaps. But it does show just Melaby from Norway there in 13 with Josh Revkin. It does show how aggressive he is. I mean, he really is a kind of determined guy. And we mentioned earlier in race 1, they're both top of the SSL rankings as skipper and crew. And he certainly wasn't taking any prisoners in that little manoeuvre.
No, absolutely not. But I suppose if you've established the inside overlap in time, and somebody isn't giving you enough room, I mean, you're not going to miss the mark. You're just going to pile in there, and if they get in the way, they get in the way. But what's interesting here now is that despite Doyle's poor rounding, and his exit from the leeward mark was pretty wide and pretty low, he is still to the right-hand side of Robert Scheidt and Henry Bonig, and it'll be interesting once again when Doyle and Payson-Flees tack whether Doyle will be ahead. Certainly initially, after Doyle's error, I would have put Scheidt ahead, and it will be interesting to see whether Doyle has negated that advantage just by getting to the right-hand side. But Kushnerovich now looking like a solid 4th, and so all 4 boats are former star world champions. So amazing quality at the top of this fleet.
And there's a good fight at the top, Prof.
Yeah.
I love a good scrap, and there they go.
Yeah.
Scheidt is beginning to show his class and his consistency, but there is Paul Cayard with Arthur Lopez again at the top of the fleet. If he can hold on to this, that'll see him at the top of the leaderboard at the end of day 1.
Yeah, and Freddie Loof, double Olympic medalist and both star and Finn world champion, is pulled through to 6th. So if you remember, Freddie was 12th at one point up the first beat, and he's slowly warming up. I mean, I was talking to Freddie this morning, and he's a busy man these days, but he had a fantastic year last year in that he got back into the OK dinghy, which was a dinghy that he sailed first when he was 16, and with very little practice, or so he said, he won the OK Dinghy World Championships at the age of 48. So he's enjoying his sport again. Obviously, when he won the last ever Olympic gold medal in the star class in London in 2012, he had some America's Cup commitments with the Artemis campaign and others.
Well, he took quite a break.
He took a break, yeah. You know, it can happen, you know. It's like
I'm not surprised.
It's like any sports.
The intensity
yeah, it's like any
of
sports
an Olympic
person.
campaign.
You know, you lose the passion first. You can do too much of it. Maybe you need a bit of a change of scene. He's got a young family and some business interests in Sweden, so he took a break. But he's loving the sailing again, and I think the spell back in the OK dinghy really energised and revitalised Freddie. And he looks like he's coming into form here in this race to a comfortable 6th with a big gap to 7.
And just a final word on Freddie. He took, as far as I understand, a 2-year break, and then in 2014 he was invited to the SSL finals in Nassau.
Right.
Jumped back onto the Star for the first time since that Olympics in 2012. And they, with Anders Ekstrom, they managed to finish second. So,
wow.
you don't lose those skills.
Class is permanent, form is temporary. So, so to the right of the screen here now, we've got Doyle and Hazen Feliz and Robert Scheidt to the left of him. And I didn't quite catch the cross. This will be interesting now. This will be interesting. Sorry, that's
Kayard, bow number 1.
Apologies. That's Kayard tacking onto port, and Kayard crossing comfortably ahead, and Scheidt crossing behind. And I would say that Kayard probably won't stay in port for too long to let the others split.
Okay, but you could get we've got a feel for how much of a lead he has now. Beautiful clean air out there. Now he's going back towards the cliffside and those puffs coming down from the mountain, which is what
majestic sight there. The 3 stars going upwind, 3 gold stars, 3 world champions, and really hiking hard and straining every sinew in their body to try and get the boat to go as fast as they can. So Eric Doyle to leeward, closest to us, and then Scheidt and Kayard.
Well, it was a cool backdrop in Lake Garda. The contrast of the bright sails and dark mountainsides. Wonderful scenes at the SSL Breeze Grand Slam. Still windy, some 14 knots at the top mark, and we are looking down the barrel towards Paul Kayard and Arthur Lopez, bow number 1. They came second in the first race, and here they are, some 9 meters ahead of Scheidt and Björning in race number 2. So this is a champagne day for Paul Kayard, who celebrates his 60th on Sunday, the big Super Sunday, which is when we will go into the quarters, semis and finals, and that top 10 cut-off that they are all aiming for. But so far, so good for Paul Kayard and Arthur Lopez.
Yeah, just looking here now, I don't have the windward mark in my sights to try and see where it is relative to the sailors, but I suspect, oh yes, it's coming up here now. So here is the mark. So they're generally, okay, they're well inside the ley line. So this is kind of a different strategy now, where Kayard is just covering his competition and is leaving the rest of the fleet get to the right of him inshore. Maybe a little wind shift has happened, but you can see now that they're not working the right-hand side so hard, and they're looking to maybe work through some wind shifts up the left or up the centre of the upwind leg. Kayard is really just sticking to shite and Doyle like glue, and I'd say if any of them break, then Kayard will be all over them very, very quickly.
Well, okay, so Kayard and Lopez holding on to the lead. Now, we're just going to do a little swap over, if you don't mind, Prof.
Yep.
Because Fritjof Clean has just walked into
How are you doing,
our
Fritjof?
studio. Not so good, no.
Say after that.
So we're going to do a little swap. So I'll let you guys sort yourselves out for a moment and just swap those headsets. We're on leg 3 of 4 of race number 2 in the Star Sailors League Grand Slam, Breeze Grand Slam and the European Championship, as Kayard and Lopez almost pull ahead 15 meters over Scheid and Björning. Doyle, Infeliz in that mix, coming inside Kayard and Lopez. So threatening them from the inside track. Scheid and Björning left of picture, bearing down on Kayard and Lopez. We're filming from the top mark. And that is the view of the front 3 as they approach this mark. Kayard and Lopez getting set for attack. And if we can ask Virtual to pull out and give us some geography as to roughly where they are in relation to the top, to see if they've got any tacks to do. And Mark will come into vision in a second. Oh, around they go. Okay, so slightly confusing. I think we are just going to go with the visuals. That is the top mark. Round they go. They've moved and set a different one. Very, very tight at the top. And Kayard managing to stay ahead of the other two, who are both bearing down on him, heading downwind. Scheid and Björning taking a right-hand course, looking down. As Kuzniewicz and Mello head round that top, ahead of Marin and Tonko, Missouri, and they are just ahead of Freddie Loof and Brian Fatigue, the Swedish-American duo right there. Shirley, super tight around the top by the front 3.
Very exciting, Digby. Very exciting. It was a lot shorter, that leg, than the first leg. And obviously they've moved the mark slightly further over, 15 degrees further over. But still, you see everyone coming around and jibing. It is still long on port. And just watching Paul Kayard defending that, you know, getting to the left-hand side as we look down. To me, that looks like he hasn't quite settled, and the two boats further to the right as I'm looking, Doyle and Scheid, just look a little bit more settled. So this battle is going to run all the way down on this final leg of race 2. It's very exciting at the front.
Well, stay tuned, because we could be in sight of another photo finish on this finish of race number 2. Shirley, in the studio we have Frida Fritjof Clean, and you don't have your normal ebullient smile on you because you're out of this race.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of unfortunate. I think we were not that smart in the situation. We pushed too much, and yeah, of course, we have to get back into the race tomorrow and fight harder to get into the top 10.
What happened?
I think we were just too greedy there. I mean, we had a great first race, and then the second one we wanted to do too perfect, and we motored a bit too much, and boom. Then we saw over our shoulder, realized that we already out. Was very clear, no discussion. And yeah, I mean, that's sometimes happens. I mean, we are used to smaller fleets, and we have to go back into the strategy. If you sail with 96 or 94 boats, that you have to take care a little bit more and take it more without risk.
Yeah, slightly. I mean, I've never seen you look so devastated, particularly after a race win.
Yeah, I mean, if you have such a great, I mean, you could see in the first race that we're dominating speed-wise, upwind, downwind. We took it easy. As we have no free pumping, you have to be very careful, and you can see it looks kind of boring if you don't have no free pumping. So we have to work on that. But I think, yeah, it was tough for us. So tomorrow will be a new day.
Well, help us commentate down towards the finish of race number 2. I mean, there's Kayard with a clean pair of heels ahead of now Kuznirovic and Mello, but it's tight down there.
Yeah, it looks pretty tight. I think here from this angle it looks like Scheidt and Kuznirovic already moving kind of forward there. And yeah, I mean, you can see here that Robert has his mast much more forward than the others, Robert Scheidt, and he's rolling really constantly, nice and a good rhythm. And yeah, Kayard I can't see now because it's a Virgil, but yeah, it's tight.
Big separation. Kayard Lopez taking, as we look down the track, the inside course. Scheidt, Björning, and are engaging with who are they right next to?
The Danish team, looks like. Or is it Eric Doyle?
Yeah, Eric Doyle. There we
Eric
go.
Doyle, so you can see here nicely how Robert is trying with a good setup to roll the boat. So you can see that the boat is really nicely rolling by himself. This is done by the trimming of the vang. If you ease the vang more, the main is getting more effect, and then the jib is pulling into the bow, and then the boat automatically starts rolling, and then you adjust the main all the time. You can see in the back that Eric Doyle is doing it also quite nicely, but I think here he is sailing on a folly. The folly in these conditions is a bit more heavy than the P-Star. 2 different boats, 2 different designs. So P-Star is more designed for better downwind speed. And yeah, I mean, we'll be very tight, but I guess that Robert will overtake Eric Doyle.
Well, Robert Scheidt, 5-time Olympian with his distinctive yellow cap. There's
jibe,
Doyle going for the jibe.
So now it will be interesting here right away. So Robert has to react, and he is reacting. Looks like, yeah, he jibed also. So yeah, now it will be very tight between them two. So here you can see Robert nicely jibing and straight. The boat is back into the roll, and Eric Doyle is going more low. So I think, yeah, Scheidt has for sure an advantage. I think Kayard also jibed out there. So
how do you feel about Kayard and Lopez out there?
Yeah, I don't know. The wind setup, the virtual gives us that Scheidt is already in the lead. So 30 meters ahead of Kayard. So I'm not sure, because the further you come down on the lake, the less breeze you have on the left side looking downwind. So I guess that Robert, he could win the race actually. So it's going to be really a photo finish like we're used to. And yeah, you can see also here that the mast is different setup, the cruise setup is different, and Robert's boat is just rolling and rolling without actually doing it with his body. It's just the setup of the. Not that the jury is listening to us. No, it's just.
You wish they were.
No. So it's basically just his tuning of the setup, and he's doing it really, really great. You can see here there's no body movement, just slightly back and forth, but no rocking, and the boat is just hammering down the wind, like you would say.
Ah, there we go. Amazing. We've been talking about Robert as this maestro, this downwind maestro. Can you throw some light on why he's so good downwind?
No, I think there are 2 guys in the Starfleet who are very fast. It's Diego Negri and Robert Scheidt, and both of them, they come from the laser, and I think the laser sailors, they're just better in downwind than any other class because they have so much feel for the boat. They always know exactly how much helm they should do, and you can see that he is nearly not helming the boat. It's just the feel for the boat, the rhythm, the waves, and they just sail it perfectly without any pumping, no rocking. They don't need it because they're just pianists. and Finn sailor is just doing it with power and no feeling. So that's the main difference actually. We can say they have it more. They have it more in the arm and not in the head, I would say.
Well, that's the jury.
Yeah,
the
they're
chief
watching.
umpire.
Yeah. I hope that they don't start getting infected here now, because we can see that they're really doing nothing. So there should be no yellow flag.
No, okay, but interesting to see the jury out there keeping an eagle eye on any illegal kinetics.
But actually, I had some experience with Robert once in Parma, a long time ago, still in the Olympic years. He was just next to us. We were, I think, first and second Parma week, and then he got the yellow flag. And I thought, okay, great, that's it. He is out. He took his penalty, and I think 5 minutes later he was again ahead. So he is pretty good on the downwind, and yeah, I think there's not many boats like him going downwind speed.
Okay, well, Robert lives here on Lake Garda, trains here, and he's teamed up with Henry Björning, a class act in this particular star boat. And we are so close, those two boats, virtual, you can almost see them on virtual eye as neck and neck, with Kayard and Lopez beginning to fall behind. Interesting insights from Fritjof Frieda as we look at the final stages of race number 2. Prof, I think you're still with us, aren't you? You're
I am
still
indeed.
mic'd up. Brilliant.
Yeah, I certainly am. It's fascinating here right now, Digby, because Robert and his crew Henry will be trying to slide around the bow of Eric Doyle and Hazen Feliz, and this next 2 or 3 minutes are going to be absolutely critical, because Doyle will be trying to hold on to Robert here and trying to prevent him from jibing into the finish. It looks like Kayard, as Frieda has said, has lost some pressure in towards the cliffs as we get down the race course, but right now it's a very tight battle between Scheidt. The digital display is showing Scheidt in the lead, but there is probably a jibe to come up, and right now Eric Doyle is preventing Robert Scheidt from jibing, because Eric Doyle is the leeward boat on starboard.
Well, let's dial back into Shirley Robertson out on the water on the camera boat, getting an eagle-eyed view of what's going out there on the track. Shirley.
Well, Digby, they're straight into the finish on this jibe, so as far as I can see, no jibing required. I mean, Robert just looks so smooth and rhythmic. We're just watching from behind, and sorry, I'm trying to talk and we're going very fast. Just try and get them to slow down a little bit, you know. And he just has that rhythm and is just edging ahead. To me, Kayard made his mistake early on, and I could see he wasn't comfortable. He went low and almost, you know, a bit too much under the pack that was still trying to get round that windward mark, and he just never looked in command at the top of that leg, and lost a lot really early on, and has struggled to get back into it. But it still looks like Robert could be beaten. I mean, literally, he's a metre ahead of Doyle, so this is not over. And as they've come out into the middle, there's more pressure now, and you can see in the boats it's a little bit more kinetic, a little bit more energy than there was earlier.
Shirley, it's Prof here. We can't quite see here. Are they both laying down in one, or you reckon there's no jibe in it? It looks...
There's no jibe.
Right.
They're laying down in one. They're about
Yeah.
100 metres from the finish.
Right.
And Robert Scheidt, Henry Björning just edging ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
Doyle in Feliz, bow 15. They are within a boat length, I would say, from the stern of Robert Scheidt and Henry Björning. But Scheidt there, you can see his mast and sail, as Fritjof was telling us, you know, a lot more movement on board the Brazilian.
Yeah, and as Fritjof says, oh, here we come up to
Boom.
the line.
Done.
And
job done.
Looks...
Race number 2 for Robert Scheidt, Henry Björning. And it looked like Eric Doyle, Payson Infeliz, pretty happy with the second spot, followed by Paul Cayard and Arthur Lopez. So amazing consistency from this Brazilian crew. They're happy with that. There's a few boats out there on the finish line, enjoying the spectacle. The sun's come out, but fabulous result from Scheidt and Björning. Doyle and Feliz in second, Cayard and Lopez crossing in third. That is the podium for race number 2, and quite a gap between them and the next set of finishers. Marin Mizura from Croatia, Tonko Barac up there. Kuznerovic, he managed to get through in fourth with Mello, Madsen and Jedsen in fifth position. So, Prof, that is race number 2. We've got the top 5 through at the moment. Quite a spread. Freddie Luth in there. Great result for him.
Yeah. I mean, you know, fantastic day now for Robert Scheidt, because he did come adrift just a little bit on that upwind leg onto the last run here, but to pull through to first was, you know, just shows the class of himself and Henry Boninger's crew. Eric Doyle probably a little bit disappointed, but nevertheless still a fantastic result to finish second. And Paul Cayard, of course, you know, was leading that race too. And it just shows that, you know, the caliber of these sailors is so high that, you know, one small mistake and your competition will pounce. So very, very steady day from Paul Cayard and Arthur Lopez, and from Robert Scheidt and Henry Bonig too.
Okay, well, the next clump all bounding through the finish line almost together, but it was the Germans Ramosa and Freiwald, head of Italians Danilon and Gazzetta, Westphal Karger in 9th, and then we saw the French duo of Xavier Rohard, Pierre-Alexis Ponceau lead that top 10, finish that top 10 through. So there we go, top 10, and another 80 boats to come through the finish line. That is it for racing. They're not going to have a third race today, Prof, so these guys will be going straight towards the harbour, and I believe Shirley is clambering on board the boat of Scheidt and Björning, and we'll catch up with them in a second. And now it's turning into a beautiful day.
Oh, it looks fantastic, Digby. Absolutely fantastic out there. You can just see the sun reflecting on the water. It looks beautiful.
Okay, Shirley, I believe you're on board with Robert Scheidt and Henry. Over to you.
I am, and it smiles all round, Digby. I mean, what a race, what a battle.
Yes, well, starting is so difficult. I think you guys saw how packed the windward end is. So we managed to get okay off the line, and once we got free, we could use our speed to be in the top 3, in the top mark, so that makes your life a lot easier.
We've been talking in the commentary about the pair of you downwind. I mean, no free pumping, so it's so critical, the finesse. I mean, just give us an indication of how you have the edge. Yeah, well, it's quite difficult because, you know, you're always in danger of getting a flag, so you got to manage of making the boat go and not overdoing it. So it's quite critical to find that balance, but yeah, Henry did a great job in the bow, helping me to not use too much rudder, you know, windward heel, and so we also positioned ourselves quite nicely in this last run, managed to jibe on the inside and put ourselves in a position to win the race. Henry, it's all about patience, isn't it? You gotta just take your moment. How pleased are you with today?
It's a very good day. It's third and first in the race. It's a perfect day for me. 9 boats here. The big fleet, hard fleet, It's a good day, very good day.
It's been great watching you. I mean, perhaps a word about some of the boats you've been racing hard against today. I mean, Paul Caillard, he's also done super.
Yeah, Paul did amazing. I think they really nailed the starts today. They were the first to tack away to the right side. And today that was the big thing, you know, to be able to get free on the right. So they, on the first cross, they were ahead, they were strong, and they sailed really well.
Well done, both of you. It's been great to watch you. Congratulations.
Thanks. Shirley, great insight from the Brazilians.
Yeah, absolute wonderful insight from Robert, and straight away he just homed in on the importance, Digby, of the start, and paying tribute to Paul Caillard and his ability to start in that incredibly bunched up windward end, you know, to try and get out of that start alive, you know, at speed, accelerated up to full pace, and then be able to tack on to port and then dictate the tactics from there on in. So really good, really fantastic work by Shite to pull through past Caillard in that race.
Well, we're looking at the back quarter of the 95 boats crossing the finish line. And still to finish, actually, your countrymen, the O'Learys, not having such a great second race.
Yeah, no, they were featuring in the first race. Double Olympian Peter and his crew, his brother Robert, they were featuring earlier on in the first race, but yeah, having a tough time here in the second race.
Okay, let's have a little review of race number 2 of the SSL Breeze Grand Slam. And Prof, you can talk us through it. You know, I at first thought it was a general recall.
Yeah, I mean, look, the entire fleet are in the top half of the line. You know, the line looks really biased towards the windward end, and given how right-hand favoured the racecourse is, that's really really cuts down your options if you don't get out of that wind end of the start line really well. So again, very right-hand favoured track. Everybody onto port tack as quickly as they can, and it's first into the cliffs. Generally comes out well, as we saw that big smash between the Swedes, Tom Lofsted and Anders Erkstrom. Looked to me as if they had been on port, and the Italians on starboard. But here we have Eric Doyle and Payson in Felice. You know, didn't go all the way, and that is, it's, you know, in Garda it's so easy to make that mistake, Digby, just to go a little bit too far. But Doyle and Payson just nailed it and snuck around the top mark 3 or 4 lengths ahead of Caillard and Lopez, and followed up by Robert Shite in third. So 3 gold stars, top 3 in the race, and coming out from the right hand side up the first beat. So here they are down the run, and once again Shite pushing hard downwind, closing up to Caillard, and it's a sign of Shite's danger downwind. Caillard here getting the rig back, lovely downwind run by him, and especially was strong in that lighter air at the bottom of the run, and Eric Doyle in second coming around. And that was where Eric made a little error, she just jumped out of the cleat and just let Shite in. Big tactical battle between the 3 of them going around the top mark. Caillard again in the lead very narrowly from Eric Doyle, who pulled through to second, probably because he just didn't go quite as far into the right hand side as Robert Shite. So Shite just got a little unstuck there with his positioning, and as you can see, change of mark, no offset leg, jibe immediately onto port for the long port and jibe down. But Caillard looks as if he went further to the west or in towards the cliff, just ran out of a little bit of pressure, and then Shite and Doyle had that massive battle down to the finish, and there must have been 1 or 2 seconds between them at the finish. So a great run by Robert Shite and Henry Benny.
Well, Robert clearly thrilled, actually, with that performance.
Yeah.
And he just was ebullient on board with Shirley, as we're seeing some of the final images of the day, live images. And the boat's now filing back into the marina, and Riva, Fraglia del Riva, the Vela Riva, the yacht club. Let's just quickly ask before Shirley gets in. Shirley, any final thoughts of the day? Because we have another 4 days of this championship to go.
Oh, Digby, I'd forgotten how fabulous it is here. I mean, great racing and the most amazing backdrop. But, you know, for me, really interesting to talk to Robert there. I mean, he was absolutely delighted. He emphasised how hard it is to sail in a fleet this size, how difficult it is to get off that start line in good shape, you know, not take any risks. And I think, you know, this qualifying series to get into that top 10 is not clear-cut at all. I mean, there's plenty of pitfalls. So I think we'll see a real battle to get into that top 10 come Sunday. But great start to the event.
Thank you, Shirley. Job well done. Enjoy your break. We'll be back tomorrow for race 3 and 4. We're in day 1 of this 5-day championship. And remember, Super Sunday is when it's really going to happen, and we'll know if they're going to make the cut or not into the top 10 to get into that quarterfinal. So, Prof, any sort of insights at the end of day 1?
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, the first race, Digby, much stronger wind. So, you know, different techniques used to sail the boat in those stronger breezes. And then towards the end of the day, the breeze eased off a lot. You know, remember that everybody's got the choice of 2 mainsails and 2 jibs to use in the Star. So the choice today was whether you would use your heavy wind flatter sails going out, or whether you'd use your more all-round sails, which might be a bit more of an advantage in the lighter air. So it'll be interesting to see what equipment that people use. It's a bit like what tyres you select in Formula 1. But you'd have to say that Paul Caird, looking very, very strong, as always, is Robert Scheidt, and Eric Doyle's class has come through as well. Terrible mistake, unfortunately, by Diego and Frida, getting disqualified by being over the line early. They knew they were fast, they had a really strong race, and they'll be kicking themselves. So hopefully they'll live to fight another day. And sad to see a smash between 2 boats resulting in a mast failure as well. So it just goes to show that the margins are very, very fine. And if you make a mistake, you can not only pay for it in terms of places, but it could be something worse as well. So roll on tomorrow.
OK, roll on tomorrow. And it was good of Fritjof to come in and fess up with such honesty.
Yeah, and it's tough to talk about, you know, when you've just come from the high of winning a race and then, you know, knowing that maybe you left the second one slip away. It's tough to come and talk about it. So fair dues to Frida for coming in and chatting to us. Yeah.
OK, but it could prove expensive. It could prove painful towards the end of the qualifying. We never know.
Giving up your discard early on in the season early on in the race is tough, because it means that you can't afford another mistake. And if you've got 10 races, everybody's going to make a mistake, and everybody's probably going to have a bad race, more than likely. So if you've already used up your ticket, well, you don't have any other tickets left to throw away. So, yeah, they'll have to be on the money for the rest of the week.
He used the word greedy, you know, and ambitious, and you know, they want to win, and it is an indication of how hard these sailors are trying to win the first ever SSL Breeze Grand Slam, combined with the Star European Championship. Prof, thank you so much, and Shirley and our whole team for getting day 1 off the ground. 2 good races in the bank. Well done to the race committee out there. We had some good tactical racing today. We're going to have more tomorrow. We're predicting 2 races, but the weather is pretty funky. It isn't the classic Lake Garda conditions, but it's still breezy. So do join us again tomorrow for 2 more of the qualifying races of the SSL Breeze Grand Slam and the Star World Championship. Until then, adios.